A red-horned monster with a sinister smile appears in the darkness. The author tells us that Kypholoms are monstrous creatures born of bitterness, tragedy, and failure. The stronger the negative emotions of what is happening, the more powerful the Kypholom becomes. Multiple hands with varying numbers of fingers try to grasp something. The narrator explains that the number of fingers on the Kayfolks' hands shows their level of power. These demons are driven by hatred for all humanity, so they wreak havoc wherever they appear, as if exacting revenge for all the bitterness they themselves have brought to the human world. A guy in a hooded sweatshirt has his hands in his pockets. The unknown character turns around. He sharply clenches his hand into a fist, delivering a punch. The author talks about how some people have gained abilities that allow them to resist the buzzards by fighting the monsters. A hooded guy stands in front of a grinning red monster. The narrator explains that such people, with special energy and unusual abilities, formed their own organization to restore balance, and they called themselves Anti-Depressors. The boy abruptly snaps out of his seat. The warrior lightning fast attacks the monster, destroying it. At the multi-story building is an alley, along which there are lanterns and benches. Next to the building is a table with chairs and an umbrella. Nearby, shadows of people can be seen and someone's hysterical voice can be heard threatening to destroy all the stupid people. A small round red monster with large teeth and black hair sticking up tries to break free from the man's grasp. The monster yells loudly, demanding to be let go. The guy holding the monster laughs and calls the monster a little asshole. The guy in a black suit, white shirt, same color shoes and red tie lifts the monster above his head with a wide smile. His surprised friends stand nearby. The red-haired kid tells his friend that the monster looks just like him. The surprised blonde-haired kid asks what they will do with the monster. After thinking about it, the kid replies that it's a good question, and speculates about taking the monster home. Someone makes a sharp jump. A guy in black and gray clothes flies over the heads of the confused friends, knocking the monster out of one kid's hands. The hero lands next to the stunned guys, who don't realize what's happening. The monster flies off into the distance. The red-haired guy looks at the stranger in surprise. His surprised friend asks who it even is. The mysterious stranger with disheveled black hair smiles smugly and says that he managed to save the guys. Abruptly turning around, the hero asks affirmatively if the heroes want to know who he is. The friends are amazed at how loudly the stranger talks, causing them to freak out. The pleased fellow adopts a fighting stance and introduces himself, calling himself their savior, Teiko Densetsu. The hero holds out his hand, demanding payment for his work. The surprised guys ask what they are supposed to pay for. Holding his outstretched hand out in front of him, Teiko earnestly explains that they owe him money for the rescue since he doesn't work for free. The guys laugh, emptying their pockets and spreading their hands. They say they spent it all on food and don't have a penny left. The boys run off. Teiko shouts after them, threateningly demanding that they stop. The hero frowns unhappily, calling the boys a bunch of tossers. Behind him stands a small red monster, who is angry that the human dared to attack him. The monster threatens, promising that the guy will regret it yet. The menacing monster with one yellow eye jumps sharply into the air, promising Teiko that he's about to die. The guy puts his hand forward with an indifferent expression, and the grinning monster crashes into it with a loud thud. Holding the monster in his hand, the guy thinks about what he should do with this monster. The shadow of a warrior with a sword appears behind the hero's back and calls out to the guy. The guy in wide black pants and a light blue hoodie frowns, holding a huge sword in his hand and pointing his hand at Teiko. A stranger with blue eyes and the same color hair tied into two short ponytails informs the hero that he should stay away from the buzzards. A guy named Hoaro Shiji demands that Teiko let the monster go immediately. The hero holds the outraged monster back with his hand. The monster demands to let him go. Looking at Hoaro, the guy asks with an indifferent look what will happen if he doesn't comply with the demand. Hoaro yells angrily, so that a pulsing vein can be seen on his neck. He shockingly repeats the question and asks if the guy realizes the danger he's in now. Hoaro indignantly explains that only anti-depressors can fight K-folk, and a normal person would risk parting with their life by engaging in battle with a demon. Without moving from his seat or changing his facial expression, Teiko asks if this is true. He hears Hotaro's voice, who hopes that the guy understands now, because while they are chatting, the monster is trying to kill him. Teiko ironically replies that he understands, pointing his finger at Hoaro and continuing to hold the monster. The hero angrily yells that his interlocutor just wants to appropriate the prey for himself. He says that the anti-depressor should be ashamed of such behavior, since he's more like a depressor. Hoaro tilts his head doomfully and closes his eyes. He abruptly raises his sword arm and begins to glow with a blue light. Teiko's voice is heard, shaming the guy for being a ponce now as well. Not paying attention to the words of his interlocutor, Hoaro swings his sword sharply. A magical beam of light flies past the surprised Teiko and pierces the demon. The demon, struck by magic, disappears behind Teiko's back. A spray of blood appears. A puddle of demon blood remains on the ground. Hotaro's gaze looks centered as the anti-depressor is upset that this demon was empty as well. A shocked Teiko stares at his bloody hand, bulging his eyes. The guy's face and jacket are similarly splattered with the monster's blood. The guy doesn't realize what it is. Teiko continues to stand still with his bloody hand raised. Hoaro, with his sword behind his back, hides his hands in his pockets and is about to leave. He tells his companion to go home, ironically noting that Teiko is soiled, and recommends washing the blood off as soon as possible, because if it dries, it will only get worse. Teiko falls to his knees, bowing his head and dropping his hands to the ground. The boy is annoyed at what has happened. As he looks at Hoaro walking away, he thinks about the fact that he lost again. The hero cries out as he raises his head. Tears are streaming from his eyes, and the corners of his mouth are downcast. Teiko thinks that it's okay, because the strong don't give up so easily. The boy cries out in surprise as he looks at his jacket, stained with blood. The friends greet Teiko. Danchi with blue hair and big round glasses smiles in a friendly way. Marissa, a redhead with a yellow backpack and a blue hoop, frowns unhappily, asking where the hell Teiko is and what kind of trouble he's in again. Aaron, the dark-skinned boy, is also displeased and demands that Teiko hurry up, because in case he's forgotten, his friends have been waiting for him for an hour. Raising two fingers, the Teiko in the bloody jacket smiles broadly. He says that he remembered that his friends were going to go to Bay Park and was already flying, but there was a small force majeure. Looking at the phone screen, which shows an image of Teiko, Marissa shrieks fearfully. Aaron jumps aside in surprise. Dancy looks away, lifting her glasses and covering her mouth with her hands. The friends ask in shock why Teiko is covered in blood. Hoaro walks along the brick fence, approaching its corner. A strong wind is blowing, peeking out from around the corner. Hoaro puzzledly asks if there's anything to it. Aaron's dark-haired boyfriend drinks juice from a turquoise-colored carton, and answers the question in the negative. Next to the house lies a huge gray monster with huge teeth, spikes on its back, and a cross on its head. Hoaro clenches his teeth in anger and slaps himself on the forehead, asking how they are even alive, because this doesn't make any sense. The calm guy in the black sweatshirt and gray shorts replies that it's equivalent to if a person lived without brains, picturing a chopped-up buzzsaw head with an orange glowing ball of light inside. Aaron reasons that not that he cares about the situation, but the monster's body will completely regenerate if the core isn't destroyed, and if the core didn't end up inside the demon, then it's somewhere else. A disgruntled Hoaro introduces a monster with many fingers. He says there will only be more demons that way. Turning away, Aaron replies that that's just the way it is, because they've already destroyed so many nuclear-free ones, and if they don't solve this problem, it's only going to get worse. Passing a monster lying on the road, the guy says he needs to think it over. Looking after him, Hoaro asks where he's going. Aaron replies that he's heading to a coffee shop. Hoaro yells angrily, asking what cafeteria there might be now, and is the guy the hungriest? Turning around, Aaron replies that satiated people think more easily. Rolling his eyes, Hoaro says it's just unimaginable. He hears Aaron's voice asking if he should get something for his friend. Hoaro asks to get him a vanilla milkshake. Aaron promises to buy Hoaro a milkshake if he gets this trio sorted out. Behind him, three terrified guys who caught the red buzzard earlier are sitting at the fence. The guys are shaking with fear, wrapping their arms around their knees. Hotaro's eyes narrow. The guy is silent. A megaphone standing in the middle of the street sounds an important announcement that residents should be alert, because a level 2 Kypholom is atrocious at the intersection of Drayford and Bay Park Road. Someone listens to this urgent message that everyone needs to evacuate the surrounding area immediately. Teiko is startled to realize that his friends are on Bay Park. He decides that he needs to save them. The guy freezes with a questioning look on his face when he hears someone say that he doesn't know what his conversation partner wants, but asks him to just let him go. A stranger in a red hoodie steps on a guy in gray clothes, pinning him against a wall. He tells the interlocutor that he should finally realize that the kayfolk are on their side and humans need to accept them in order to evolve as a race. Teiko overhears from around the corner as the stranger continues his speech, explaining that God gifted the anti-depressors with special powers, but it made them better than regular humans. The stranger says that's not fair and suggests to the shocked kid that he join him in overthrowing the anti-depressors. The guy in gray pulls away from the red-hooded interlocutor and rudely sends him along with his cult. The man in red leans over the interlocutor and grudgingly interjects, calling him an asshole. The guy yells loudly, asks the interlocutor if he's deaf, and sends him away again. The unknown man in red strikes the guy in gray. The guy is shocked to be hit so hard. Grinning and swinging his fist, the stranger angrily demands that the guy repeat what he said. He calls his interlocutor a creature and claims that he thinks he is sick. Teiko is shocked by what he sees. The hero grabs his head and shakes it, realizing that he is confused and does not know whether to rush to the help of his friends or to save this kid. Teiko stands around the corner as the stranger in red kicks the guy lying on the ground. A hand slaps the guy in gray in the face. Waving his hands, Teiko thinks about what he should do. Suddenly an idea pops into his head. Teiko smiles slyly, peering out from around the corner. A policeman's voice is heard from the phone he is holding in his hand, assuring him that they are on their way. The hero thanks the police for their promptness. He thinks the cops will reward him if he can figure it out before they arrive. The stranger in red puts his hands over the guy in gray lying on the ground. Behind his back there is a loud shout calling for him to stop. Teiko attacks the surprised stranger. He pushes the guy in red away with his feet. Teiko stands in a fighting stance. The frightened man intends to run away. Jumping up, the guy lying on the ground asks the hero who he is. The aggressive stranger is stunned by what has happened. The hero smiles. Teiko with a smug smile says that the interlocutor had better knock himself out and not waste time, because he is late. The stranger snickers unhappily. The man waves his arms, taking a stand, and angrily asks the guy how dare he approach. Teiko is surprised. The hero shouts enthusiastically, admiring the stranger's huge chin. A sudden movement occurs. The man tries to strike, but Teiko dodges, keeping his arms folded across his chest. The surprised character in red scowls evilly. Teiko, with a frightened expression on his face, can't believe he managed to avoid the blow himself. The stranger throws 2 more sharp punches, but Teiko manages to dodge each time. The stranger gets angry, clenches his hands into fists, and intends to attack Teiko. The hero sarcastically states that even a sloth is faster than his opponent. Teiko dodges his foe's fists, asking with a smile if his opponent's chin outweighs his opponent's. The hero is surprised when his opponent suddenly grabs him by the hair. The stranger lifts the guy up, executing a powerful punch. Teiko grunts. Droplets of blood appear on his face. The stranger grins. He looks at the guy, who tilts his head. Blood drips from Teiko's face. The black-haired stranger says that the guy shouldn't have messed with him, and now he would be honored to put such an arrogant bastard in his place. Taking off his hood and waving his arms, the stranger laughs gloatingly. He says that macaque men only understand the language of pain, and so it will be so, but he wants to offer the guy just one chance to make amends. The madman offers to join his revolutionary army. He freezes on the spot in bewilderment, hearing Teiko's voice asking when his opponent will shut up already. The hero wipes his nose, from which blood dripped. The guy tells his opponent that he just smashed his nose, and this is not yet a victory, because he is already used to such small things. Teiko looks up and withdraws his hand, which has blood on it. The guy says it's his turn now. The terrified opponent mistakes Teiko for a demon. Pointing a gun at his opponent, he shouts loudly that the monster must be exterminated. Teiko and the guy in gray are shocked to see their opponent holding a firearm, their eyes round with fear. Teiko hides his hands in his pockets and tries to convince his opponent to listen to him. Pointing the gun at his opponent, the stranger in red demands that the guy shut up, calling him a monster from another planet. The guy in gray shrinks fearfully into the wall, covering his mouth with his hands. He sees the stranger in red pointing a gun at Teiko's head. The madman says he understands everything now and accuses his opponent of being just like those things. Teiko doesn't understand what his interlocutor is saying. The mad stranger says that now he has even more reason to finish the guy off. The man's gaze looks intimidating. Teiko clenches his teeth, fearfully thinking that this could be the end of his life coming because of some psycho. The guy decides it must be a joke. A gunshot rings out. The stranger shoots at Teiko, holding the weapon in his outstretched hand. He aims for the head. Steam comes off the weapon the stranger is holding. Teiko lies on the ground. His face is covered in blood. The hero doesn't move. Streams of blood run down his face. The stranger exhales contentedly. Raising his weapon, he says, "Calm now." A red glow lights up in Teiko's black eyes. The stranger lowers his gaze and says that he was able to destroy this mistake of nature, and the raison d'etre for the likes of him is extinction. Only a shadow remains on the pavement. The shocked stranger interrupts his speech, his eyes round with astonishment, while the puzzled guy doesn't realize where his opponent has gone. Teiko stands behind him. The stranger looks away fearfully. Teiko holds his head and yells angrily, trying to realize if this guy seriously shot him. The opponent asks in surprise what kind of joke this is, since he thought the opponent was dead. The guy in gray and the stranger in red shockingly interject. Teiko clenches his hand into a fist and his eyes turn red. He sends his interlocutor off and says that he might even die, since the guy wouldn't care about that. The hero's eyes burn with red fire. The stranger is startled by the guy's stare. Teiko thinks about the fact that the greatest action movie of all time taught him something important. The guy remembers the cover of the CD that has a fish with a fist on it. He thinks about the fact that in the action movie, Kung Fu Fish, the first rule was to not always solve a problem with a reasonable method. The hero thinks that in real combat, you can't predict what your opponent might throw out, so there is only one single correct solution. Teiko runs forward, thinking that he will use all the kinetic energy, directing it to the genitals of the enemy. The hero makes a sudden leap forward. His eyes burn with fire. Teiko kicks the enemy in the groin with all his might. His opponent flies off to the side. The guy calls this technique the Nutcracker technique. The stranger cries out in pain, and Teiko ironically apologizes to his future children. The hero's eyes still burn with the flames of anger. He says that his opponent wouldn't have raised his children to be good people anyway. Teiko looms over the enemy who has fallen to the ground. The hero's eyes are burning red fire. His hands are clenched into fists, and steam is coming from his mouth. Pressing his lips together, the boy thinks about the fact that he had no choice. Teiko laughs happily, not yet believing that what he had planned had succeeded. His pale opponent is lying on the ground. A guy in gray clothes with a red square is watching in surprise. He doesn't realize what just happened. Teiko approaches the guy with a smug smile and tells him that he looks so-so. The hero asks his interlocutor if he can stand. The guy answers in the affirmative, but you can hear the uncertainty in his voice. The kid rises to his feet, holding onto the hero's hand, and says that his mom will be mad. A smiling Teiko asks his interlocutor how he plans to pay back. The hero is surprised to hear about his mom. The kid looks at him puzzled when Teiko changes his mind about paying and tells his interlocutor to stomp home, not lingering anywhere else. Teiko walks past his defeated foe, raising his hand and not turning around. He says this is a dangerous neighborhood and reminds the kid to remember to call an ambulance for his attacker. The hero asks his friends what he heard about Bay Park being a buzzkill. A puzzled Marissa replies that there was. Dunshi waves cheerfully and says they are on their way home. A disgruntled Aaron asks what happened to Teiko again. Looking at his phone, the hero smiles smugly and says he tripped. Aaron suspects his friend is lying. Passers-by walk past Teiko. One woman turns around when she sees a guy with a bloody face and tries to see if he's okay. Teiko thinks about asking his friends stupid questions, since they heard the announcement too. The guy rolls his eyes, deciding that his plan is still on track. Marissa says that she and her friends are on Drayford Street right now and asks if they can meet there. Talking on the phone, Teiko replies that he can't make it as he has some business to attend to. Marissa cringes nervously as she looks at the phone in her hand. She nervously curses and yells for Teiko not to dare do the intended thing. Standing behind the girl are a surprised Danshi and Aaron, who, folding his arms across his chest, asks what happened at their friend's place this time. Turning to her friends, Marissa clenches her hands into fists and explains that Teiko wants to find adventure on his ass again, most likely going to go to bat with a buzzkill. Danshi interjects in surprise. Aaron grudgingly says that their friend apparently wanted to die. A horrified Dunshi waves his hands and says they need to stop their friend. Aaron angrily looks away and says that Dunshi is right, but he doesn't know how to do it. Marissa replies that she has an idea. She wants to get there before Teiko and stop him. Dunshi and Aaron's jaws drop from shock. They say this is the worst kind of idea ever. Marissa frowns, replying that she knows that, but sees no other solution to the situation, since Teiko is a psychopath. A joyful Teiko, meanwhile, runs down the street. He runs past the corner of a house where the antidepressors are coming out. Hoaro asks if the K-folk are in Bay Park. Eren answers in the affirmative. Hoaro expresses hope that at least this time they'll get a K-folk with a core. Teiko and Hoaro meet eyes. They are both displeased. Eren reacts calmly. Teiko is angry that he met that anti-depressor again and he wants to steal from him again. The hero decides he won't let that happen. He speeds up, running forward. Hoaro and Eren stare after him. Eren says that means this guy is the reason. Hoaro interjects in bewilderment. Eren explains that he felt something strange on the way back from the cafe. Hoaro asks what caused him to wake up so suddenly. Eren clarifies if that means they already know each other too. Hoaro answers in the affirmative and says he needs to tell Corbin soon. At that moment, a pile of rocks flies from the ground along with a red car. The frightened crowd of people rushes in different directions. The monster, which appeared in the middle of the roadway between houses and cars, destroys everything around it. The buzzard has a long jaw, huge teeth, an elongated body and burning red eyes. There is a rumble down the street. One of the antidepressors asks the other if they have found a new ally. The antidepressors quickly run down the street. One of them says that this guy is newly awakened, and the other is happy to be the first to see him. Eren remembers walking out of the diner with an orange bag and being invited to come back for more. While chewing on something, the guy heard a strange sound and turned in the direction of the noise. Between the houses, the guy saw a cloud of smoke and a black streak going into the sky. Eren immediately realized exactly what was going on there. Hoaro speeds up, noticing that this awakened person just ran past them. Eren holds a smartphone in his hand, and a voice from there asks what happened to Hoaro, as his voice is visibly shaking. A vapor appears on Hotaro's forehead as he says that he had already met this guy before his awakening and despite his lack of skills, he still tried to fight the buzzkill. The antidepressor suggests that the guy lacks the instinct for self-preservation. Remembering Teiko's eyes burning red, Hoaro says that he's not sure where his motivation came from, as the kid ran headlong into Bay Park. As she continues to run, Eren holds up the phone. A voice from the receiver says it's great and he'll be waiting at the spot where the buzzkill was seen. A surprised Hoaro states that they can handle it themselves. Eren confirms that the situation is under control and a man with powers like the one he's talking to is of no use there. A guy with lilac hair and matching clothes holds up his phone and replies that he knows that, but he's going there for a different purpose, because he's interested in seeing the awakened badass in person. The guy is standing outside the diner, and next to him is an adoring crowd marveling at him. Corbin Gano laughs loudly while talking on the phone and says he can't wait any longer. Growling loudly, the buzzsaw runs down the street, tearing down everything in his path. Someone stares at his back, clenching his hand into a fist and watching as the monster picks up chunks of asphalt, scattering them to the sides. Standing in the middle of the road, Teiko smiles smugly, happy to have found a buzzkill. The guy thinks the monster looks weak, and he doesn't care about its size. Suddenly someone overtakes the shocked Teiko. The hero's eyes widen with surprise. The guy's path is blocked by a disgruntled Marissa, who folds her arms across her chest. Teiko asks what the friend forgot here. The girl demands that the friend leave here. The guy tries to object, grabbing Teiko by the nose. Marissa says that there can't be any buts, because the guy is acting too careless of himself, like he's going to die at 17. Teiko tries to shout that if he can finish this K-fool off, he'll rub the nose of all the anti-depressors. The K-fool with a long tongue throws chunks of asphalt around him. Marissa asks Teiko to look at the monster and says he'll kill the guy with one spit. The street fills with dust. A huge chunk of asphalt flies over the heroes. Marissa says demandingly that Teiko has had enough of her and now they're going home. The guy cringes, and his eyes go back to their normal color for a second. The hero's eyes light up with red fire again. Marissa doesn't realize what's happening when Teiko abruptly knocks her down. The boy and girl fly off to the side, and a giant boulder flies into the spot where they were just standing. Jumping up, Marissa screams frightened, not realizing where the rock came from. Lying on the ground, the girl lifts herself up and looks at her friend who is lying face down next to her. She asks if Teiko is okay. Suddenly, the guy is next to Marissa and asks the girl if she's okay. Marissa answers in the affirmative, but reminds him that Teiko never answered her question. Behind the characters' backs, a boulder crushes the legs of a passerby, who screams loudly in pain. Noticing a man lying under the boulder, the friends ask how he is. The man angrily asks what they themselves think about it, and continues to lurch loudly. Teiko ends up next to the man, promises to pick up the rock and begins to remove it, putting a lot of effort into it. The man in the mustard t-shirt asks what the guy is up to. Teiko strains hard, committing an effort. He tosses the rock aside. The man lying on the ground is shocked. Marissa is surprised as well. Teiko rubs his chin thoughtfully, looking at the rampaging buzzsaw. The boy thinks about what he should do to the monster. Looking at the monster's 2 fingers, he realizes that this demon is level 2, which means it's only 1 level more than the little guy he caught earlier, and this monster shouldn't be much stronger. Sticking out his tongue, Teiko smiles smugly. Marissa marvels at the fact that the monster is just standing still, clenching his hand into a fist. Teiko calls out to the demon with a smug smile, calling its name. The man the boy saved is shocked. Marissa yells loudly, trying to figure out why the guy is doing this. Kypholom turns around questioningly. The man lying on the ground menacingly asks Teiko why he did it. The guy smilingly asks his interlocutor not to worry and promises he'll handle it. The frightened man asks if the guy is an antidepressant. Teiko with a sly smile answers the question in the negative and says that he is a regular high school student. The man with a shocked smile replies that they are finished. The buzzkill's eyes burn with red fire. He begins to move, leaving behind a deep trench in the asphalt. The Kypholom approaches Teiko, looming over him. The boy adopts a fighting stance, preparing for battle. Teiko smiles smugly, his eyes burning red as the guy says that this is his moment of glory. Swinging his fist and leaping towards the enemy, the schoolboy says that Teiko Densetsu's annals begin here. The kid ends up hanging upside down. Hoaro shouts nervously, turning to Teiko. He asks if the guy realizes the danger he's in now, since only anti-depressors can fight the K-folk. Hanging upside down, Teiko decides that things are bad. When the Kypholom lifts the guy above his mouth and opens it wide, Teiko yells that it looks like he's in trouble and asks for someone to help him. Kypholom holds Teiko over his open mouth while a small pebble flies into his head. Marissa angrily demands that the monster get off her friend. She calls the buzzard a shovelhead and promises to stone him. Teiko sneeringly asks if Marissa was serious when she called the monster shovelhead. The girl irritably demands that the guy shut up. Gritting her teeth, Marissa swings again to throw another rock. At that moment, someone puts a hand on her shoulder and tells the girl not to tense up. Looking at the smiling Corbin, Marissa is surprised to remember the famous guy, but he calls himself a simple passerby who decided to help. With a wide smile, Corbin admits that's not really true and asks the girl to observe what's going on. In the guy's hand is a bag from the diner. Hoaro appears with a huge sword and jumps up over the head of the monster that opened its jaws to devour Teiko. With one sharp blow, Hoaro slices the demon open. Teiko is not happy with what is happening. Hoaro shares his feelings. The defeated K-folk falls to the ground. Next to him, Teiko falls headfirst into the ground. Hoaro lands on his knee, holding his sword in his hand. He yells loudly, asking Teiko what his problem is. Teiko, in anger, loudly asks the same question. A concerned Marissa runs up to her friend. Teiko berates Hoaro for stealing his loot a second time, to which the Anti-Depressor replies that the guy almost died a second time, clenching his hand into a fist. Hoaro repeats that K-folk are no task for a schoolboy. Teiko, sitting on the pavement in front of Marissa, replies that he knows that, but wanted to at least try it. Hoaro angrily demands that the guy stop talking nonsense. Sitting on a rock with a bag of food between the arguing opponents, Corbin asks that they quiet down as they are spoiling their appetite. A huge crowd of people has gathered behind him. Hoaro hesitantly tries to justify himself. Teiko begins to guess who is in front of him. Corbin is happily eating. Behind his back, people are fairly shouting the sorcerer's name and wanting to know what he's doing here. Someone in the crowd is thrilled to see the sorcerer so close for the first time. People are waving their hands happily, expressing their delight. They think the sorcerer is cool. A gray-haired man in a turquoise sweater appears in front of the crowd. He asks what everyone is so excited about. A man in a sports sweatshirt and a hunched nose grudgingly declares that it would be better if someone like this sorcerer came to their rescue. He suggests that people look at the damage that K-folk have done, calling the anti-depressors cretins. The man declares that they can't do their jobs. Hoaro wrinkles his nose in displeasure, asking the man what he was yapping about. Corbin, who is sitting on a rock, puts his hand forward with a smile, stopping the anti-depressor. The sorcerer says he has something to answer. Corbin coughs, gathering his thoughts. Teiko calls Sorcerer an old man, and states that the man needs to think critically. Corbin smiles contentedly. Hoaro is puzzled. The angry man looks at the antidepressors, clenching his teeth. Sitting on the pavement and propping his head up with his hand, Teiko reasons that if sorcerers were in charge of petty buzzkills, antidepressors wouldn't be needed and wouldn't have any jobs. Corbin smiles broadly, chuckling. The gray-haired man stands between two rows of people who call him evil and ask if he's happy with his statement. Waving his hands, Corbin with a satisfied smile suggests that everyone disperse as he still needs to chat with his chicks. He calls out loudly to Hoaro. The tired antidepressor standing next to him asks what he wants from him and doesn't understand why he has to yell like that. Aaron is behind them leaning over a man who was lying under a rock. Teiko leans over, resting his hands on his knees. Marissa asks her friend if he's okay. The boy replies that he's been through worse. Marissa scolds Teiko loudly, explaining that this is what she was talking about, but her friend never listens to her. The guy apologizes, holding his head. Their conversation is watched by a smiling Corbin and a disgruntled Hoaro. The sorcerer asks if anyone has any ideas on what triggered the awakening. Hoaro grudgingly replies that it was obviously something stupid. Teiko laughs. A satisfied Corbin says they can't complain, because it means recruitment and training will go much easier, and you can sense a ton of potential in such active people. Hoaro isn't happy with the idea about recruiting and training. Putting his hand to his mouth, Corbin yells loudly, asking Teiko if he wants the job. A shocked Hotaro's jaw drops. Teiko and Marissa turn around in surprise. The boy interjects. Satisfied, Corbin suggests the hero join them, because the team needs energized people like him, and the guy fits perfectly into their ranks. The sorcerer warns that if Teiko wants to equal their strength, he'll have to practice a bit. He asks the hero how he feels about the idea. A surprised Teiko replies that the idea is super and the proposal sounds fly. Corbin rejoices and asks the guy to write down his phone number so he can call him when he's free to discuss the details. Marissa frowns unhappily upon hearing this conversation. Teiko agrees with a smile and says he'll call after work. Hoaro turns pale with horror. Teiko and Corbin stand between Hoaro and Marissa in the middle of the street. Suddenly, the girl blurts out if they are joking. Teiko quickly runs away, motioning for Marissa to follow him. The boy says he needs to tell the others this great news. He says goodbye to Corbin, who waves goodbye. A dumbfounded Marissa stands still. A shocked Hoaro taps a smiling Corbin on the top of the head and asks if he's crazy, because you can't recruit anyone by putting their life in danger. The sorcerer replies that he knows that, but it's okay, because this guy throws himself into battle without a second thought, and people like that make the most skillful fighters. Standing behind Corbin's back, Hoaro frowns and says that this guy doesn't realize the risks at all. Nearby, a man in an orange t-shirt thanks Aaron for his help. Corbin replies to Hoaro that he's the one who doesn't realize the whole truth, because really he just doesn't give a shit. Walking down the street with Marissa, Teiko turns around and waves. He says there's a question. The guy asks if they pay more than a living wage. Corbin smiles and gives a thumbs up, answering in the affirmative. Hoaro is flabbergasted. Aaron says it was predictable. Hoaro clenches his teeth in anger and tells Corbin that it's too dangerous. The sorcerer hums silently, agreeing. Teiko rejoices at the fact that he's about to become an antidepressor. The boy lifts his chin proudly, thinking about the fact that he'll be paid a lot more than his current job. He thinks that his new job will be like being a police officer, only much more dangerous. A somber Marissa walks beside her friend. Teiko presses his lips together, thinking about the fact that if he becomes strong enough, the whole world will know him, just like Corbin is now. He's sure that sorcerers get paid a lot of money. The hero's eyes light up red as he decides that even though it's going to be difficult, he's in and doesn't care about the odds. Tilting his head back, Teiko closes his eyes. Corbin smiles widely and winks as he says that taking risks is part of life. Hoaro sighs doomly, realizing that Corbin thinks his phrase sounds cool. Teiko's friends are shocked by the news that he's going to be an anti-depressor. Dancy rejoices, smiling widely, while Aaron frowns and opens his mouth in surprise. Teiko smiles happily, thinking he's a badass. He brags that Corbin personally gave him his number. Aaron, with his eyebrows drawn together, asks if that means Teiko is as powerful as the other antidepressants. Holding the phone in his hand, Teiko replies with a wide smile that it's unlikely, but Corbin has promised to train him. A saddened Marissa walks next to him. Danchi thinks Teiko has given them some very cool news. Continuing to smile, Teiko admits that he has always dreamed of looking down on others from above, and now he has that chance. Marissa silently walks beside him. Aaron smiles broadly and asks Teiko if that means he just wants to be cool and rich. Teiko and Marissa walk along the street. The hero replies to his friend's question that it does. After thinking about it, Teiko confesses to his friends that, to be honest, he doesn't want to work at a diner for the rest of his life, because right now he's barely making ends meet, especially after being on his own. The boy expresses confidence that his father will be smiling down from heaven at the sight of his rich son. Or maybe he already is. So Teiko is determined to do what he's decided to do. Marissa frowns, the corners of her lips drooping. Danchi cheerfully wishes his friend good luck. Aaron reminds Teiko not to forget his friends when he goes upstairs. Looking at the image of his friends on his smartphone screen, Teiko promises that this will never happen. The boy is surprised to notice a drop of blood dripping from his nose. Teiko wipes his nose with his hand and says it's bleeding again. A concerned Marissa says to rinse his nose. The guy wants to ask his girlfriend a question. The girl turns to Teiko and asks what he wants to know. The guy asks how she is. He thinks his friend looks sad. Marissa fake laughs, assuring him that she's fine. Teiko looks at her in disbelief and wants her friend to tell the truth about what happened. Looking at the girl, Teiko says he's about to guess the reason and asks if it has anything to do with his new job. Marissa abruptly starts screaming. She accuses her friend of doing something stupid, because if he doesn't know, anti-depressors are 3 times more likely to die than police officers. The girl explains that she understands her friend's desire to get rich and knows he's willing to take the risk, but it's over the top. Marissa admits to Teiko that she doesn't want to lose him. Walking forward, the guy says she shouldn't worry. At that moment, the guy in the gray t-shirt that Teiko saved earlier is walking down the street. He's rubbing his head with his hand. Someone tells him that the worst thing about dying is realizing that there's still a lot you haven't gotten around to. The bruised guy doesn't understand what they want him to do. Someone unknown tells him that his goal is to avoid regret and help the others, including this guy. With it, a black hooded figure stands in front of the guy. Bright red sneakers and sweatshirt laces stand out against the black clothing. The stranger tells the guy that there is a clear answer to why exactly he was taken from the shelter. The unknown man with red eyes holds out his hand and assures the guy that a great future awaits him and his destiny is known ahead of time. Turning away from Teiko, Marissa reasons that she doesn't understand why the guy refused to let Maeve take him as well. Screaming, Teiko replies that then Marissa would be his sister, and he wouldn't stand for that. Marissa stops abruptly and menacingly demands that the guy repeat what he just said. Teiko apologizes and explains that actually, his lifestyle would make his parents worry about him, but he's not comfortable with that kind of thing. A guy in a gray square t-shirt tries to run away when a stranger tells him that K-folk kill people all the time, and some of them have children. A purple glow illuminates the stranger, who says with a smile that children can die too, and he wants to end it. The unknown man puts his hand on the shoulder of a guy in a gray t-shirt. The guy's eyes light up red. Teiko says seriously that he wants parents to stop losing their children and children to stop losing their parents. Marissa is standing at the front of the house. Teiko is next to her. As she approaches the door, the girl asks her friend to keep his word, and says that their conversation isn't over yet. Chin up. Teiko ironically says that he was actually going to die at the first practice. Marissa yells out, left unsatisfied with her friend's answer. The girl is left standing on the doorstep in bewilderment as Teiko abruptly runs off, bidding her farewell and promising to call her. Marissa doesn't move, looking after the guy who ran away and covering one eye. Behind her back, the door opens and a woman peeks out, asking the girl what's wrong. She guesses it's about Teiko before she even notices the guy and is surprised by his speed. A focused Teiko is quickly running somewhere. A man in black clothes surrounded by purple smoke smiles contentedly and says that 2 fingers is pretty good. A buzzard with huge burning red eyes appears in front of the man. Judging by the writing on the clothes, the stranger is the creator of this beast. He says it's not what he expected, but it'll do. The giant demon has huge red eyes burning. The monster makes loud noises. A blue stream of energy comes from the man's hand. The stranger with turquoise hair looks questioningly at his gloved hand. He picks up his cell phone, putting the smartphone to his ear. The man hears an indignant voice asking Mikey where he is and why there has been no message or call from him in 20 minutes. The voice from the receiver scolds the interlocutor for constantly making his mother worry. The woman demands that her son come home immediately. The man with red eyes frowns in indignation, because he doesn't like the fact that the woman called herself a mother. He says that the humans should remember that he is the only parent possible, for he is the All-Father and there is no one else like him. The stranger shouts in anger that this is his son, and the woman will never see him again, and let him find another kid. Having insulted the interlocutor, he clutches his hand, destroying the phone. The stranger hums in surprise as two characters appear behind him, ordering him to stand still. The man with a snide smile ironically remarks that the antidepressors have arrived and asks how they knew where to find him. A character in a crocodile mask raises his hand with a smart watch to make a call. He reports that the suspect was found when their attention was drawn to a sudden spike in morale about a minute ago. A man in a business suit and a bunny mask stands nearby. The agent reports that the suspect has unusually pale skin, a nose ring, is about 180 centimeters tall, and has a standard build. The guy's hand begins to glow with a pink glow. The agent reports information that the suspect has a strange prosthetic in place of his left arm, which is the source of the surge. The man jumps forward abruptly, putting his arm out and about to attack. The agent says the suspect is showing initial signs of aggression. The crocodile-headed agent doesn't have time to speak while the man attacks him, stamping him into the ground. Flashes of light appear around the man. The agent with the hare's head recoils. He watches fearfully, clenching his hand into a fist. The man holds the buzzsaw in his hand and expresses his displeasure with only one finger. The stranger extends his hand to the second agent, who tries to contact his colleagues, requesting immediate support. He tries to say that the suspect can turn people into monsters, but doesn't have time to finish. The man holds the agent's watch in his hand, through which someone tries to contact him, asking what happened, but there is no answer. Crouching down between two blue newly created little buzzards, he addresses the agents through the watch. The stranger greets them, giving his name, Regalo Frin, and says he's the one their dead colleagues were talking about. The man wryly states that he has a request that all the remaining agents be sent to him. A crazed smile appears on Regalo's face as he says with a sneer that he can't wait to find out how many new children he's going to have. Corbin sits on a metal fence. Aaron is standing next to him, leaning on the railing. They are outside a tall building. The sorcerer talks about eliminating this Regalo Frin. Looking at his interlocutor, Aaron asks Corbin if the man could have anything to do with the rebels. The sorcerer sighs and closes his eyes in thought. He replies that the suspect could very well be connected to these bandits, but Regalo Frin told them his whole story, which means he wants to make a name for himself, which is not in the spirit of the rebels. Corbin says that usually gangsters try to stay in the shadows and push drugs, so Regalo is either dumb as a cork. Corbin's thought is ended by Aaron, who says that Regalo could serve as a distraction. The sorcerer replies that his interlocutor is amazingly smart, because that's what he meant to say. As they leave, Aaron says that they need to catch this Regalo first, and then find out his true intentions. Guy promises to pass the information on to Shiji and the others, but wants to know where to find him. Corbin replies with a wide smile that Hoaro hangs out with the new guy. Aaron is surprised. The guy says that he thought Corbin was going to handle the rookie himself. He did give his phone number, after all. With a sly laugh, Corbin replies that he wouldn't take that risk. Walking somewhere, Hoaro tells the man on the phone to wait for him at the bus stop on Drayford Street. He promises to be there soon. Hotaro's interlocutor, dressed in black and wearing a hairband, replies that he understands, simultaneously calling Corbin a bastard. Hoaro and Teiko shake the phones in their hands and shout angrily. Standing at the bus stop, Teiko thinks about the fact that he will now have to rename the contact on his phone. He is unhappy that the contact turned out to be Hoaro, but decides it was necessary for security reasons. Teiko, wearing a black tracksuit and a hairband, sits at a bus stop with his foot on his leg. He stares at the screen of his cell phone. There are tall houses and a construction crane next to the stop, and cars are driving along the road. Suddenly the guy is called out by a man in black crossing the road. Teiko raises his head and looks questioningly at the stranger. The man approaches Teiko and asks how long he has been working at the coffee shop. The guy replies that he has been since about 15 years. His interlocutor asks if the guy started working a little early and suggests that he probably has strict parents. Teiko replies indifferently that he has no parents at all. The red-eyed man asks to be forgiven and asks if he can find out how the guy is doing without them. Teiko hesitates and replies that it's hard for him to live without his family. But before he died his father told him to earn as much as he could, and those words are firmly planted in his mind. Teiko looks at the man in the black suit with the red laces and apologizes for revealing himself, since the man didn't even ask about it, keeping his hands in his pockets. His interlocutor gives a friendly chuckle and says it's no big deal. The hooded man talks about how the rebels are looking for new members. All you have to do is go back and forth, scatter bags, and get paid 30,000 bucks an hour. Teiko crosses his arms and says he disapproves of this, because his father told him not to go against the law. The boy clarifies that he didn't intend to do such a thing himself. The man indifferently tells him that he is an orphan now, and his father will never find out. Teiko grudgingly interjects. Even though the man wants to get off the subject, Teiko has no intention of ending the conversation that way. He demands that the man apologize. The boy is puzzled as a strange glowing hand approaches him. Regalo seals Teiko into the ground with one sharp blow. Hovering over the lad, he retorts with a smile, clutching Teiko's head with his hand. Regalo says that he thought they were going to have a heart-to-heart talk, like those who lost their fathers. But people keep making things difficult. Regalo's eyes light up and his expression turns serious as he tells Teiko that he's going to die. Suddenly, a black shadow appears behind the man's back in a leap. Hoaro delivers a sharp blow to Regalo. A surprised Teiko lies on the ground watching the scene. Hoaro looks determined. Regalo laughs hysterically and smiles contentedly. Teiko presses his lips together, displeased to see Hoaro again. The anti-depressor sends Regalo flying and covers Teiko with one strong punch. The man takes off over the roof of the building. Turning to Teiko, Hoaro yells at him to get the hell out of here. He stands up on his elbow, rubbing his bruised head and grimacing. Teiko says he was going to do just that. Teiko runs off down the road to the side, while Hoaro jumps up high, about to chase after his enemy. Regalo hovers in the air while Hoaro quickly approaches him in a leap. Hovering above the roof of a building, Regalo looks relaxed and smiles as he looks at his opponent. Hoaro is angry, swinging his sword. The anti-depressor realizes that his enemy fits the description of a wanted criminal and asks who he is. Regalo grudgingly asks why the anti-depressor wasn't warned that his name is Regalo Frin. He sneeringly demands that Hoaro repeat the name syllabically. The anti-depressor angrily demands that his enemy shut up and says that Regalo knew exactly what he meant. An exasperated Hoaro asks what his opponent needs. Regalo says with a sneer that that's what he should have asked. He replies that he just wants to be a father. That's all. Teiko runs down the street along the buildings and realizes he doesn't have the strength to run home. The boy tries to decide what to do. He thinks that maybe he should run to Marissa's house. Suddenly Teiko stops. He decides that he won't do that. After all, this is a test. The boy reasons that the more he relies on others, and the further he runs, the harder it will be for him to get stronger. Teiko's face twists into a grimace of rage. He clenches his hands into fists and says that if he kicks this weirda's ass, the blue-haired man will be jealous. Teiko firmly decides that he has to do it. Hoaro uses magic, attacking his opponent. Regalo stares at him calmly, swinging his sword. Hoaro delivers a blow that sends Regalo flying backwards. The anti-depressor swings his sword again. Regalo reaches his hand out to him. He smiles as energy begins to gather around his hand. Hoaro and Regalo enter the fray, reflecting each other's blows. Anti-depressor concentrates on the battle. He realizes that the opponent is strong. Hoaro swings his sword, but Regalo manages to leap aside. Anti-depressor accelerates for the jump. Hoaro rushes into the fight with burning eyes. He tries to put his enemy in a magic circle from which he cannot escape. Hoaro throws a punch, but his opponent is out of range. The anti-depressor rushes past, and lightning from his sword flashes all around. He moves with lightning speed. Hotaro's eyes burn with blue fire, and Regalo clenches his hand into a fist with a smile. Hoaro lands on the roof of a building. A pillar of blue energy follows him. Glass flies out of the windows of the building. Hotaro's sword slams into the concrete. A vortex forms around it. Standing behind the anti-depressor's back, Regalo says with a sneer that his marksmanship level is terrible. Hoaro angrily demands that the enemy shut up. The opponents take a high jump. Hoaro is about to get to the enemy. Regalo is calm and ironically demands that the anti-depressor show what he can do. He asks if the elders haven't taught the hero how to control his emotions. A stream of energy appears around Regalo's hand. The man tells his opponent that he should have learned calmness from him. Smiling broadly, Regalo bursts forward. Surrounded by energy, the man slams his hand into the wall, shattering it. Hoaro doesn't realize what's happening. The floor of the house begins to collapse. The two shocked guys inside the building see a hole under their feet. The guys fall down. Hoaro watches this happen. Anti-Depressor jumps onto the rock flying down. Hoaro chops the boulders falling down with his sword, and tries to reach his hand in flight to one of the guys flying in the air. Hoaro picks up two of the falling guys, but behind his back someone else falls out of the house with a loud scream. Holding the guys, a focused Hoaro turns around and sees a blonde-haired guy flying upside down. Regalo hangs on, holding onto the balcony of the building with his hand. He puts his other hand up to his mouth and yells with a sneer that the Anti-Depressor has forgotten another person. And what the hell is he supposed to do now? A guy with blonde hair wearing a green hoodie flies down with tears and a loud scream. Spreading his arms out to the sides, Teiko yells to the guy that he's catching him. Noticing this out of the corner of his eye, Hoaro is surprised. Teiko leaps to catch the falling guy. The Anti-Depressor watches this in anger. Hoaro and Teiko land on different parts of the street. Teiko anxiously asks the rescued guy how he is. The guy yells loudly, leaning on his knees and touching the ground with his hands. Sitting on the edge of the roof, Regalo says this is getting too boring, pointing downward with his hand, from which a pink light comes off. The man says it's time to spice things up. There is an explosion near Teiko and the guy sitting on the ground. The hero looks questioningly at the spot from which the glow is coming off. The smoke clears and a kayfolk with several fingers appears. The monster has red hair, large red eyes glowing on its face, and scraps of clothing can be seen on its body. The monster growls. The rescued guy covers his head with his hands and starts screaming loudly. Teiko assumes a fighting stance, clenches his hands into fists, and says we need to get the hell out of here. He holds out his hand to the crying guy in the green sweatshirt and suggests that he should leave sooner rather than later. The boy is surprised. Hoaro reaches for his sword and tells the rescued guys to run away. Standing on the edge of the cracked building, Regalo grins mockingly. He abruptly leaves the spot he was just standing on. Regalo touches the forehead of the frightened black guy with his hand. He then touches his hand to the head of the second guy saved by the Anti-Depressor. The expression on the guy's face changes. Regalo jumps up over where he just stood and everything lights up with a flash of light. He counts himself lucky that his new brainchild has a level 2. Hoaro is stunned. He holds the sword in front of him. Regalo is pleased that he was able to surprise his opponent, and admits that with one touch he can turn anyone into a buzzsaw. Behind the man's back are two buzzards. A tall one with long arms and a pumped-up one with huge teeth. A pink glow emanates from Regalo's hand. He says that the morality from his prosthetic goes into the man and the roulette begins. But the higher the level, the less chance. So most of the KYP holomaniacs are level 1. The man ironically explains that because his babies are disposable, they don't have nuclei either. They're modified, which means the Anti-Depressors have killed a bunch of people already. Regalo laughs evilly, calling Anti-Depressors murderers. The man tells Hoaro that he's already sick of him with his evasions, and commands that the kayfolk kill his opponent. Shocked, Hoaro can't move when he realizes that he's been killing people all this time. He thinks about the fact that these people were already dead and he had no choice. Regalo sits down by the fence. The kayfolk's eyes light up. The demons rush in to attack. Hoaro stands in the middle of the street holding his sword in front of him. The monsters are closing in on him. The Anti-Depressor mentally calls himself a scum and a true monster. A sly smile appears on Regalo's face. Hotaro's eyes round as he admits to himself that he thinks he is a monster. Sitting on the edge of the road by the fence, Regalo points his finger at his opponent and comments that his level of morality is very unstable, which will be bad for the mental state of the Anti-Depressor. Regalo is puzzled. Hoaro lashes out at his enemy in anger, promising to gut him. The Anti-Depressor swings his blade sharply. A startled Regalo jumps aside. The kayfolk freeze in place. The city is shown in another dimension. Regalo is stunned. He tries to respond to the attack. A spray of blood flies away from Regalo. After completing the blow, Hoaro exhales loudly. His eyes burn with blue fire. Regalo is shocked. The man screams loudly as he looks at his severed arm. His prosthetic arm burns with magical fire. Regalo calls the kayfolk weaklings and demands that they destroy the enemy immediately. Regalo directs a stream of magic at his opponent. Hoaro stands still, watching him. Regalo hunches over, losing his strength as he channeled it to fight his opponent. A pink magical flame burns ahead. The kayfolk grow small. Hoaro lies on the ground and croaks as he clenches his teeth. Two K-folk stand over him. The anti-depressor realizes that he has no strength left at all after the attack. The guy can't even move. Regalo sighs heavily, but he is surprised that his opponent has deprived himself of strength. He asks his enemy with a sneer if he thought he was going to kill him. The man warns that murder is outlawed, even if he is a criminal. Regalo says the anti-depressor didn't even hit the right hand and asks if they're taking everyone in now. Hoaro freaks out, cursing and clenching his teeth, wrinkling his forehead. Regalo thinks about the fact that there was something odd about the anti-depressor's attack. He recalls Hotaro's attack and thinks about the fact that for a split second he thought it would be simply impossible to dodge, as if fate itself was telling Regalo that he was going to die here and now. Smiling slyly, the man thinks about the fact that it was the first time he had experienced something like that and it was intriguing. Kypholoms chases after Teiko, who tries to carry the rescued boy in his arms. The monster commits punches, destroying the road. Teiko tries to hold on by performing a somersault. When the K-folk stops in front of a crater in the asphalt, Teiko quickly moves around the corner of the building with the rescued guy. He lowers the kid to the ground. The terrified kid covers his ears with his hands. Looking up at his rescuer, Teiko puts his hand on his shoulder and tells him to wait here. The kid asks what Teiko is going to do. The hero with the bloodied face breathes heavily and replies that the guy shouldn't take it into his head, but rather think of himself. Suddenly Teiko boldly runs out from around the corner towards the dangerous buzzard. The monster executes sharp punches. Teiko stares shocked at the enemy, clenching his hands into fists. The guy takes a hard blow to the head. Kypholoms waves his fists angrily. Teiko flies off to the side after a strong blow from the demon. In flight, the guy realizes that he is in a dangerous situation. The monster strikes again, from which Teiko flies upwards. The astonished guy thinks about the fact that this monster is stronger than the previous ones. The monster delivers another strong blow. The kid around the corner screams fearfully, covering his head with his hands. When it gets quieter, he looks out from around the corner and calls out for his savior. The boy is shocked by what he sees. His eyes widen with horror and his teeth clench. A bloodied Teiko lies on the ground, placing the prosthetic in his pocket. Regalo says with a smirk that the anti-depressor can consider himself lucky, because the energy in his hand is not infinite and he won't be able to turn everyone all the time, which means the enemy has time to strike back. Hoaro lies on the ground confused. The little buzzards are climbing on top of him at this point. Smirking, Regalo expresses pity with a sneer. As the anti-depressor's body is numb, Hoaro angrily dispatches his opponent, calling him a bastard. The anti-depressor cringes as the K-folk begin beating him in the stomach. Looking at the Kypholoms, Regalo responds with a wide smile to his opponent's retort that it was too rough. The man honestly admits that he would have finished off his foe long ago if he wanted to, but the anti-depressor's resistance is perfect for his plan. Kypholoms clutches Teiko's head. Regalo tells Hoaro that he seems to know the kid pretty intimately. He informs him that Teiko has been hit hard. Hoaro clenches his teeth in anger, realizing that badly. Regalo mockingly tells the anti-depressor that he's got a funny look in his eyes right now, and it'll be even funnier when the guy sees what his friend turns into. Teiko is breathing heavily. He thinks back to the past. The guy remembers himself as a little kid with a huge backpack and a wheeled suitcase. He stands next to his father, who apologizes to his son for the situation. Teiko replies to him that it's no big deal and he realizes that it has become very expensive to support him since his mother left. Turning to his son, the father asks in surprise where he gets that kind of thinking from. The serious kid explains that this is what his father taught him. Teiko's father laughs and says that's very cute. Placing his hand on his son's head, the father says he has something to say and asks Teiko to memorize his words for life. The father points somewhere with his hand and asks if his son sees that man. Teiko looks away. Teiko and his father see a homeless man begging for alms. The father asks his son not to end up like that man, because it could be the result of an unfair life as well as his own mistakes. Teiko's father explains that money is the engine of the world, and without it, his son will have no right to live, so he needs to earn as much as he can. The father complements the instruction by clarifying that his son should not go against the law and should use only legal methods to earn money. Teiko replies that he understands and says he wants to help the homeless man. The father asks in surprise if this is true. Teiko says with a smile that the reason is that if he can help him, maybe in the future it will lead him to success, and then he'll thank the guy in some interview or something. Father is supportive of Teiko. He waves to his smiling son who runs towards the beggar. Teiko's father's face looks haggard, but he genuinely smiles a slight smile as he looks at his son. The father turns around, getting ready to leave. A homeless man with a thick beard stares sullenly in front of him. Running up to the beggar, Teiko says that he doesn't look so good, and so the kid decided to cheer him up. Teiko holds out a chocolate bar to the man with a smile. He tells the homeless man that it's a candy bar and not to worry about the kid, because he's not hungry. The man in the hat stares silently at the candy bar that Teiko holds out to him. The guy asks embarrassedly if maybe the man doesn't like chocolate. Looking at the beggar, Teiko says that he doesn't like chocolate either, so he promises to bring something else tomorrow and will hope the man likes it this time. The guy holds out the food to the old man again. He says it's very meaty beef jerky and asks if the man will have such a meal. The old man looks at Teiko in silence. The boy says in surprise that since he won't, it's fine. The girl with her arms folded across her chest grudgingly asks Teiko what this time. Standing next to her is an angry man with a shovel, who tells Teiko that adults should handle such matters themselves and it's not kid stuff. Standing next to the homeless man, Teiko points his hand at the girl and the man. He asks them to get away from him. The boy calls the girl Clarissa and grudgingly demands that she not tail him, but rather go play with her dolls. The girl corrects him and says that she is Marissa, not Clarissa. A disgruntled Teiko holds up the money. He tells the old man that he has no idea what the man likes, so here's $1 for him. The beggar looks interested. Teiko explains that he doesn't have any more, so he won't be able to bring anything tomorrow. The old man abruptly snatches the money from the hand of the surprised Teiko. The boy looks at his hand, wondering how the beggar snatched the money so quickly. He looks after the old man and thinks that this time he took the money without thinking at all, too quickly. The boy remembers his father saying that without money you have no right to live. Teiko thinks about how the old man was glad that the kid gave him a second chance. Teiko yells, asking the old man to stop. The man with the shovel is shocked by Teiko's actions. Marissa yells after the fleeing kid, trying to figure out where he's going. Teiko quickly runs away, yelling after the old man to give him his money back. The flashback ends. Regalo's prosthetic begins to glow as the man takes his hand out of his pocket. He says with a sly smile that the time has come since his arm has been restored. Hoaro is shocked when he hears Regalo inform him that the antidepressor was too late. Teiko screams hysterically that she won't live without him. Regalo commits to the shock. Teiko, whose body is covered in bruises, finds himself in some sort of red space. A certain strange character appears in front of him and asks how he is doing. He says he's been watching Teiko and realized that the guy isn't a fighter at all. Teiko is standing back to back with a guy who looks a lot like him in build and hairstyle. But the guy's face is hidden under a scary mask with sharp teeth and huge eyes. His ears are pointed and his hands are hidden under a white cloth. The guy's body is red in color with white stripes. Stretching out his hand and pointing his finger in front of him, Teiko's doppelganger wants the hero to look somewhere. Teiko stands back to back with the doppelganger with horrifying eyes that look as if they're painted on. The hero turns around in surprise. In front of Teiko and his doppelganger is a whole wall of bandage-wrapped people with red crosses painted on them. The victims are hanging upside down. The doppelganger says Teiko would have ended up the same way, but luck saved him. Looking at one of the victims with a red cross on his head, he explains that this guy touched Teiko with what's called a tearful palm that instantly turns a person into a buzzkill. The white-masked doppelganger says that Teiko is lucky, as he has an immunity that compensates for his weakness. The surprised hero hears the red guy say he's looked through his memories. He shows Teiko a buzzkill with blonde hair that attacked the hero. An image of the guy from the back alley appears on the Kypholoms' forehead. The doppelganger says that Teiko saved this kid before, but then he was touched by a tearful palm. The image of the blonde-haired kid appears in front of Teiko's face. The doppelganger says that means he didn't save anyone, but there's still more to come, showing Teiko the last guy he saved, who is sitting on the ground, fearfully covering his head with his hands. The doppelganger asks what's going to happen to this kid. The clone says that this kid is younger than all the others, and asks if Teiko is going to save him or if he too will die like all the others. Teiko is shocked. The hero yells that it won't happen, as he won't let that happen. Turning his back and pointing his finger in the direction, the doppelganger rejoices that Teiko is easygoing, for he is not good at motivational speeches. The guy asks the hero to try his best not to get bored. The space is filled with moving shadows, one of which is an intimidating mask. Regalo is tense. Hoaro is shocked and clenches his teeth in terror. The antidepressor is frozen in place. The kid Teiko rescued covers his mouth with his fist. His face contorts in a grimace of fear. The hero's body begins to change. The blonde-haired Kypholom is puzzled when Teiko says that he doesn't know how, but he seems to have finally figured it out. The kid who's hiding around the corner turns around in surprise, not realizing what's going on. From the shroud of smoke, Teiko's voice is heard, apologizing for dragging the kid into this. The hero appears in the guise of a buzzkill. His face is covered with a mask, and instead of eyes there are horns. His physique and clothes are just as changed. Teiko says that even though he couldn't save the kid on the first try, he won't miss a second chance. Jumping up, preparing to attack, Teiko promises that he won't charge this time. The guy adopts a fighting stance as the kayfolk with blonde hair attacks him. The monster takes a hard hit. Teiko jumps up, leaving a huge laceration on the body of the kayfolk he is fighting. Smoke billows from the monster's wound. Teiko delivers another blow to the monster's head in a leap. The buzzsaw's eyes burn. Teiko throws the demon into the air with the next blow of his hand. The hero seals the monster into the ground. Blood splatters flying to the sides. Teiko stands in the smoke wearing bloody clothes. The hero is silent. Blood drips from his mask, peeking out from around the corner. Teiko, wearing a mask with sharp teeth, asks if the kid is okay. The boy is puzzled. The boy starts screaming loudly when he sees Teiko in his new form. The kid cries frightenedly, letting out a cry of fear. Teiko realizes that he has frightened the boy. The hero notices that the blue-haired anti-depressor is still fighting, which means you need to help him. Looking at the crying boy, Teiko tells him not to worry. The mask collapses, revealing Teiko's face as the kid says he'll be back soon. Regalo looks around in bewilderment, not realizing what just happened. The man thinks about the fact that it's very strange, since he can no longer feel the level 2 buzzsaw and that weird kid, whoever he turned into. Hoaro hisses menacingly, asking if both guys are dead. At the same time, the anti-depressor feels his morale returning. He forces himself to move. An alarmed Regalo demands that Hoaro quiet down because it's stressful. He threatens the anti-depressor, saying that if he moves, Regalo will finish him off. The kayfolk hover over him. Hoaro is shocked. A black shadow appears over the kayfolk. Hoaro leans his elbows on the ground, watching as a bloody Teiko suddenly appears, attacking the Kypholoms. Hoaro is shocked. He screams, asking where the guy came from. Regalo is stunned. He doesn't understand how the guy was able to survive, but notices that the palm has recharged. Teiko, in the midst of the battle, anxiously asks Hoaro if he's in one piece. The anti-depressor replies that he's fine. Crouching down, Hoaro says he's the one who should ask the guy that. Regalo stands in front of him. With a sharp kick, he tosses both anti-depressors aside. Hoaro leans on his knee and sword, warning Teiko to be careful, because their enemy has a strange arm and he can. Teiko doesn't let the anti-depressor finish speaking. The guy voices that their opponent's hand has the ability to turn people into buzzards. Regalo and Hoaro stare at each other intently. Regalo is shocked that the guy is aware of his abilities. He tries to figure out how his opponent knows this, since Regalo only told his blue-haired opponent about his hand. The criminal's hand is shaking, and he smiles slyly, noticing it. The man realizes that since his hand is shaking, his opponent is not so simple. Looking at the anti-depressor, Teiko doesn't know how to answer his question about how he knew about his enemy's abilities. The guy first says he doesn't know, then replies that a man told him about it. A surprised Hoaro asks who it was. Regalo lunges at his opponent in a rage, asking in anger who he is. Reaching forward, he demands that Teiko answer what he did to his son. Teiko interjects in surprise. A distraught Regalo demands that the lad not pretend he didn't understand, for he killed his child and Teiko has his blood on his hands. The hero remembers the buzzard with blonde hair and realizes that it is him that Regalo calls his son. Regalo laughs in rage. Suddenly a fist flies into his face. Teiko, with burning red eyes, strikes the surprised foe hard in the face. The hero makes a leap for the punch. Teiko with clenched fists punches Regalo, who flies off to the side. The guy jumps on the enemy when he is already lying on the ground. A shocked Regalo looks up, hovering over the enemy. Teiko says that the people Regalo killed weren't his children, for he turned them into will-less monsters, and that's not what parents do. The hero insults the enemy and says that he would rather die in the most brutal agony than become his child. Regalo laughs hysterically and says that he did not expect such an interesting turn of events. The enemy calls Teiko a funny kid with a sneer. Regalo puts his hand out in front of him, using his stored energy. Teiko is surprised, and Hoaro yells at the kid to get the hell out of here. A huge high-level kayfolk appears. The monster has 3 eyes, huge teeth, and wings. The monster appears right out of Regalo's glove. Teiko flies away from the powerful energy stream. The hero in flight is surprised by what is happening. Teiko falls at the curb. Looking at him, Hoaro curses loudly. The anti-depressor stands in the middle of the road with a weapon in his hand, climbing onto the buzzsaw. Regalo sarcastically apologizes for not being able to linger any longer, as his arm is getting weaker little by little. But before leaving, the man has something important to say, which he asks to pass on to his colleagues of the anti-depressor. Sitting on top of a buzzsaw, a satisfied Regalo says that in 3 days his children will wreak havoc in this city, and he will try to finish off as many people as possible. Regalo's smile looks insane as he tells the anti-depressor to blame his buddy for pissing him off so badly, and with a sneer expresses his hope that Hoaro will have time to say goodbye to everyone. Blue rays shoot out from Hotaro's eyes, forming a grid. The anti-depressor loudly shouts to the enemy that they aren't done yet. Hoaro swings his sword, freezing in place. He is shocked that morale is still too low for the battle. The anti-depressor curses. Bowing his head, he watches as the enemy flies off into the distance on a winged buzzsaw. Hoaro falls to the ground along with his huge sword. At the curb sits an immovable Teiko. Time passes when 2 pairs of feet show in the dust. Corbin says it's too dusty here. The sorcerer walks down the street with Aaron. Corbin waves with a smile and asks the guys how recruiting is going. He is shocked to notice the guys who are unconscious. Hoaro is lying on the ground and Teiko is sitting up, leaning on the fence. The sorcerer thinks they're both dead. Corbin screams fearfully, putting his palms to his mouth. He asks if the boys are alive. Aaron calmly replies that it looks like they're just unconscious. The sorcerer rejoices at this. Corbin points his hand over the fence, behind which is a live buzzard. He says he'll help the guys and asks Aaron to take care of the monster in the meantime. The guy takes the order. The little blue kayfolk stands bewildered beside his defeated friend. Aaron's shadow looms over the monster. Guy clenches his hand into a fist and stares in surprise in front of him. Kypholom looks tired and frightened. The monster asks in a weak voice to kill him. Aaron falls silent upon hearing this request again. Standing over the kayfolk, who is in a pool of blood, Aaron promises to fulfill his request. The anti-depressors walk down the road. Corbin carries Teiko and Hoaro on his shoulders. He asks his friend if everything is okay. Aaron interjects. The sorcerer says that Aaron is more brooding now than usual. The boy replies that there are some thoughts. Remembering the image of the tormented buzzard, he says that usually buzzards are just saturated with hatred for humans and try to kill no matter how weak they are. But this monster didn't even try to attack or move. Turning to her friend, Aaron explains that there was no hope in this buzzard's eyes and he himself asked the anti-depressor to finish him off. Aaron asks Corbin if he's ever seen anything like that, carrying an unconscious Hoaro and Teiko on his shoulders. The sorcerer replies thoughtfully that it is very interesting indeed, and in his memory it has never happened before. Teiko hangs upside down. Corbin wishes they had missed such a show. The street is engulfed in smoke. A Teiko clone in a white mask with strange eyes and sharp teeth tells the hero that he won and cheers him on. The red guy claps his hands. The clone holds out his hands to a confused Teiko and says he was downright impressed. And this new form of the hero's mesmerized him so much he couldn't take his eyes off it. The hero's strange doppelganger advises him to keep it up, as he now has big stakes on Teiko. The hero looks at the clone puzzled, wondering at his appearance. Teiko's face is covered in sweat. Red and black shadows flicker around. The hero is confused. Suddenly Teiko rises abruptly, clutching the white sheet with his hands. He screams, trying to realize where he is. The guy hears someone's calm reply that for the moment he is in an antidepressant asylum. Teiko is sitting on the bed in a red t-shirt, clutching the blanket with his hands. Violet energy is swirling around him. Next to the guy is Aaron, who asks the hero not to move, because his treatment will be maximally effective only when the patient does not move. A bewildered Teiko replies that he understands everything. Aaron sits on a chair near the bed Teiko is on. The hero smiles happily and says that this treatment is very pleasant. Aaron says that the more often he uses the treatment, the more time it takes, and he would have finished by now, but he had to treat Shiji before Teiko. A purple glow comes off of the antidepressor's hands. Teiko interjects, trying to figure out who Shiji is, and guesses it's the blue-haired antidepressor. Eren replies that it is. He's the third of their company. The antidepressor asks if he and Hoaro have a fight between them. Teiko reassures Eren that it definitely didn't happen and asks him not to worry about it. The boy looks around at the surroundings. The walls of the room are covered with gray tiles. On the kitchen worktop is a microwave and a container of dishes. A large washing machine is installed next to the cabinets. The hero asks the antidepressor how long he's been sitting on it. Eren replies that it's almost an hour and a half. Teiko is greatly surprised by this. The hero closes his eyes and smugly states that, luckily for the antidepressor, Eren will soon be able to forget about it once Teiko gets the same powers and becomes a super healer. The interlocutor replies that although Teiko himself doesn't realize it yet, he already has powers. Teiko rounds his eyes in surprise. Eren calmly confirms his words. Looking at his interlocutor, Teiko asks how Eren realized this. The tired antidepressor replies that during his treatment, Teiko's body stabilized and distributed the healing energy on its own. Eren explains that this is the sign of power, and they call their energy morality. Shrouded in a purple haze, Eren says that morality comes from emotion, and it takes an unimaginably large emotional surge to get it, but not everyone can handle that kind of energy. A purple haze fills the space. Eren says that morality is universal in application and depends on the needs of the one using it. Representing a muscular arm with a clenched fist, he says you can use morality to increase your physical stats if you want to get into a fight. The antidepressor presents a man's torso with pumped-up muscles and says that otherwise, you can increase your defense parameters if you don't want to get into a fight. Teiko looks at his arm as Eren says that some needs require a narrower direction of morality, and the antidepressor calls them natures. Eren explains that in simpler terms, naturals are unique abilities that unfold depending on a person's actions, thoughts, ideals, and genetics. Holding his hands out in front of him with violet energy flowing from them, Eren says that his designs allow him to strengthen not only himself, but his allies as well, and specifically right now he is enhancing the healing processes in Teiko's body. Eren asks if the guy can remember his extreme strong emotional outburst. Teiko lowers his eyes thoughtfully, but says he's not sure how he felt. The antidepressor asks if he had a near-death experience. Teiko jumps up happily, recalling a situation where he thought he died after being shot in the head, but it turned out he was shot with an airgun, so the hero got up and pummeled his opponent. Eren asks how long the battle lasted, to which Teiko smugly replies that he took out the enemy with one punch. The antidepressor suggests that the guy's inscriptions can increase his physical strength, so he can't heal. Teiko's eyes light up with red fire as he offers to argue the point. Eren holds her hands out in front of Teiko, continuing to treat him, when the guy suddenly asks where Shiji is now and how he is. At that moment, a blue-haired guy enters the room. He tells the guy that he can call him Hoaro. Standing at the door, Hoaro explains that Eren calls everyone by their last name out of politeness. Teiko replies that he understands. Eren informs him that he is done with Densetsu. Teiko thanks him with a smile. The ventilation located in the wall comes on. Hoaro informs that there is news that Eren and Corbin already know. Teiko takes a seat on the bed. Eren stands next to him. Hoaro sits down in a chair with his hands on his knees. He says that in 3 days, the guy who attacked them is planning to flood the city with buzzkillers. Teiko is surprised. The interlocutor informs him that their enemy's name is Regalo Frin. With a serious expression on his face, Hoaro says that it is imperative that they prepare as well as possible. But he reassures Teiko that he shouldn't worry, as a newcomer would not be allowed to fight such a battle. Teiko wonders why, and assures him that he is ready to fight. Eren looks questioningly at the hero. Leaning against the wall, Hoaro says that's impossible, because Teiko isn't ready yet, and besides, there's no telling what kind of buzzards they'll have to face in 3 days. Teiko's eyes burn red fire as he decisively states that it doesn't matter, because he has one place to protect. Hoaro tries to say that they can protect everyone without Teiko, but the hero interrupts him, stating that the antidepressor apparently didn't understand him. Teiko declares emphatically that he can't sit idle. Teiko says angrily that if Regalo gets to this place, the hero will finish the bastard off before the antidepressors find him, because he can't let that happen. Standing behind Teiko's back, Eren asks what this place is. Looking at Hoaro sitting across from him, the hero replies that it's the Greenville Asylum, where he lived for a while. Hoaro is surprised when he hears from the hero that he won't even let him lay a finger on the place. Corbin appears on the doorstep of the room, wearing a yellow hoodie, with his hair gathered in a bun and a pink ice cream cone. Hoaro and Eren turn to see him. Teiko is surprised when Corbin calmly greets the guys and states that it's too hot in here, biting into his ice cream and shoving his hands in his pockets. Corbin smiles. He promises to straighten things out and asks Teiko to follow him. The boy asks in surprise where they'll be going. Corbin replies with a wide smile that he'll show Teiko his private room. The anti-depressor base with small windows says light. Teiko is surprised and delighted that he will have his own room. Corbin suggests that he go quickly. They find themselves in front of a light wood door. The sorcerer says that everything they need is already inside. Teiko cheers as he looks at the door and says that it is very nice. Corbin chews on a popsicle stick and asks the guy to take his time running away. The hero turns to his interlocutor in surprise, not sure what he means. Corbin replies that he understands his feelings, since he overheard their little argument with Hoaro and apologizes for it. Looking at Teiko, Corbin says that it seems like the guy wants to protect Greenville to show himself as the only hero for the orphans, and he won't let others protect the orphanage since he's the only one connected to it. Teiko replies that his interlocutor got it right. Corbin starts laughing loudly and says that the guy is acting like Hoaro. Teiko interjects in surprise. Behind the sorcerer's back are Eren and a disgruntled Hoaro, who demands that Corbin stop twerking already. The sorcerer promises with a cheerful smile that out of respect he won't go into details, but asks Teiko to understand that he is perfectly understood and has no enemies here. Teiko looks at his interlocutor confusedly. The hero turns to the door in silence. As he approaches the door, he wishes the guys a good night. Hoaro and Eren also wish Teiko a good night. Corbin good-naturedly wishes the guy sweet dreams. Corbin complains that he hates seeing people sad. Footsteps sound on the stairs. Corbin comes down first, holding onto the railing. Hoaro and Eren follow him. The sorcerer says that his words don't apply to the two of them, for he doesn't even seem to have seen them smile. Hoaro calls out to his friend, chewing on a popsicle stick. Corbin interjects. Hoaro questions how much the sorcerer has managed to hear from his and Teiko's dialogue. Corbin sighs, turning to his interlocutor with a wide smile. He cheerfully declares that he heard absolutely everything. He has Teiko's angry look on his face when it came to the battle with the Kayfolk. Gritting his teeth, Hoaro says he wants to give Teiko a chance to fight Regalo. Corbin freezes in place puzzled. A slight sly smile appears on his face. Corbin laughs through his tears, pointing a finger at his interlocutor. Hoaro frowns unhappily at his friend's laughter, gritting his teeth and clenching his hand into a fist. Hoaro demands that Corbin stop laughing. Smiling broadly, the sorcerer replies that he thought it was funny because he wanted to call Teiko too. Hoaro asks in surprise if this is true. Corbin replies in the affirmative. Eren silently walks down the stairs following her friends. Squinting, Corbin says that he can't get Teiko to stay away without protecting the orphanage from the perceived danger. Hoaro asks what they'll do with the boy, since he's the new guy. Listening to this conversation, Eren lowers her eyes thoughtfully. Hoaro walks down the stairs following Corbin, who rubs his head in thought. Eren looks after them, stopping on the stairs. Corbin says he doesn't know what to do yet, but they'll figure it out as the situation unfolds. Warlock complains that he's tired and suggests that maybe it's time for him to retire. Hoaro reminds the guy that he's only 24 years old. Eren says she'll come up with a plan. Corbin and Hoaro turn around shocked. Eren explains that he too is not happy that Teiko is being prevented from protecting the place he holds dear, so he asks for the opportunity to take charge of his training. A surprised Corbin looks at Hoaro and asks if Eren has been switched. The interlocutor hesitantly replies that he doesn't even know. When Eren asks what's wrong, the anti-depressor, trying to look like his usual self, replies that it's nothing. Teiko, wearing a brightly colored t-shirt, walks silently down the stairs, lips pursed. The hero closes the door, slamming it loudly. Teiko's fists are clenched. He recalls the anti-depressor's words when Hoaro said he wanted to give Teiko a chance in the battle with Regalo. Corbin replied that he couldn't make the kid sit on the sidelines, putting the orphanage in danger. And Eren said he's not happy either if the hero can't protect a place he holds dear, so he wants to take responsibility for training him. Teiko throws his head back, covering his face with his hands. Tears are streaming down his cheeks. The boy gratefully calls the anti-depressors assholes, because he did not expect such a touching support. Night falls on the city. A buzzard flies up to the production building, on top of which sits Regalo. Someone is waiting for the man on the roof of the building. When he lands, Regalo runs to the person he is talking to, and the Kypholom dissolves into thin air. A man with long hair the same color as Regalo's asks his injured friend what happened to his arm. Sticking out his tongue, Regalo goofs and sneers at the fact that he apparently lost his arm along the way. Looking at the man's other artificial arm, the interviewer asks if the prosthetic arm has malfunctioned. Regalo replies that this is the first time this has ever happened. Regalo stands across from the interlocutor with his arms crossed over his chest. The man explains that at first he mistook the prosthetic failure for some morale outbursts and thought everything was fine, but the arm ended up fumbling. The stranger in pink sneakers responds that it was probably from overexertion. He explains that a teary palm is a pretty fragile thing, and asks Regalo not to be so careless. Regalo looks at his palm with a wide smile and replies that he can be careless, as there is someone to take care of his hand today. His interlocutor reasons with an indifferent expression that it would then be better to attack the city tomorrow when all the upgrades are ready. Regalo replies with a crazy smile that all the fun would be lost that way. After all, he didn't tell the Anti-Depressors to gather all their strength for nothing. The man cheerfully declares that he wants a real party. His companion sighs heavily, covers his eyes, and asks a rhetorical question about why he is the most adequate in their trio. Morning comes. Someone knocks loudly on the door. Teiko bounces fearfully on the bed and asks loudly who it is. Standing on the threshold of the door opening is Aaron with a large box. The guy's hair is partially tied in a bundle at the back of his head. He wishes Teiko a good morning, apologizes for waking him up, and explains that in order to register as an antidepressant, the guy will need some paperwork. A sleepy Teiko sits on the edge of the bed and rubs his eyes. Aaron suggests that the guy's papers are worth looking for at the shelter. The hero answers in the affirmative, and thinks to himself about why he had to knock so loudly. Dropping the box on the floor, Aaron says they'll go to the shelter today. Teiko asks what's in the box. The interlocutor replies that his uniform is in there. Teiko is pleasantly shocked that it's already ready. Aaron replies that their tailor is a very talented girl. Anti-Depressor says she'll wait for the guy outside. A disgruntled Marissa arches her eyebrows and demands that someone pick up the phone. The girl holds up a smartphone in her hand. The screen displays the name, Tay. A guy's voice comes out and greets the friend. Marissa angrily asks Teiko where he is, since she called 37 times and the guy didn't answer. Teiko replies that he has an excuse. Marissa sits on the couch, hugging a pillow and holding her phone in front of her. The girl is angry. She says that if there is an excuse, then let Teiko make the excuse. 5 minutes of excuses go by. Marissa is shocked. She says this is a terrible situation. Teiko asks if she understands now. The girl sits on a couch in a room with wood floors, blue walls, a tall floor lamp, a large flat-screen TV, a shelf with an audio system, and a glass table with books, a roll of paper, and tissues in a box. Teiko's voice comes from the phone, saying that he's worried that Regalo will attack the orphanage. Marissa replies that Teiko shouldn't be thinking about that right now or it will end badly, and the other antidepressors will handle themselves, because that's their job. Marissa stares at her phone, hugging her pillow. Teiko's voice comes from the smartphone, saying that they should assume that Regalo can turn the whole orphanage into a buzzkill. The guy thinks back to Mr. Sagine and everyone else. He asks how the girl thinks it would have been fair to kill them then. Teiko reasons that after killing them like that, he himself would sink to Regalo's level and become a villain. A surprised Marissa asks why Teiko is talking about this, calling the girl Marie. The guy honestly admits that he's scared, standing at the door with his phone near his ear. Teiko suddenly asks the girl to forget about it, says he'll ask the antidepressants better, apologizes, promises to call later, and hurriedly says goodbye. Teiko puts her hand on the doorknob and opens the door. The hero in his new suit sees Aaron standing on the doorstep and tells him he's ready. The anti-depressor says that any morality user who kills an innocent is automatically their enemy, but there are exceptions when absolutely necessary. Teiko says thoughtfully that Aaron is right. Suddenly Teiko remembers something and angrily yells after Aaron, asking if he overheard the conversation. The anti-depressor calmly says it's time to move out. Teiko irritably yells that you can't just say something like that and walk away. He asks if Aaron hasn't heard anything about personal space. There are 3 anti-depressors in the middle of the street, one of whom berates the girl he's talking to for spending too much money on some stupid lizard costume. One guy stands leaning against a metal fence. Two other men emerge from the building across the street. Teiko stares in front of him in surprise. He is surprised that there are so many antidepressors. A dark-haired and dark-skinned guy in a blue suit stands by the fence with his hands in his pockets. He notices the new guy. Another anti-depressor with red hair, fox ears, and wearing a gray-orange suit closes his eyes, folding his arms across his chest. A very tall blonde-haired guy looks down at a girl with blue hair wearing an unusual costume with wide sleeves, a top, shorts and mesh tights. The girl justifies that her costume isn't dumb and it's very practical in combat, as it will intimidate the buzzards so the anti-depressors win. The guy angrily replies that he respects the girl's love of amphibians, but she's spending half her paycheck on soft lizard toys. And that's a very unwise decision, because Tua isn't thinking about the future. Rubbing his chin, the dark-skinned guy standing behind the girl's back says that he thinks it's okay. Tua clenches her fists angrily and tells her interlocutor that Shane is for her. The blonde guy replies that their antidepressor friend just likes to argue. The muscular guy turns to the fox girl as she peeks out from behind his back and says that unfortunately Grau is right, because buzzards are afraid of other buzzards, and Tua doesn't look like a monster in her costume. Grau yells loudly that this is what he was talking about. Tua covers her ears with her hands and curses loudly in response. Teiko shifts his gaze to Eren, standing next to him with an indifferent expression on his face, and asks if maybe they should get the hell out of here. Tua instantly appears beside them and greets Eren and Teiko, tucking her hands in her pockets. The girl persistently asks the new guy for his independent opinion. Tua asks what the guy thinks, whether she did the right thing by spending $3,000 on a lizard costume. Teiko shockingly interjects, naming the amount. He clarifies to see if he heard him. Tua shifts his eyebrows. Teiko abruptly blurts out a negative answer, standing between a puzzled Tua and Eren. With tears in her eyes, Teiko hysterically yells that it's wrong because the girl could have kept that money. Looking at Grau, Shane says with an ironic smile that Corbin wasn't lying when he said Teiko had a temper. Shane asks his buddy if he's interested in the newcomer. Grau is silent and looks puzzled. Tua, frowning, stares in front of her. The girl's facial expression turns abruptly cheerful, and she asks the newcomer what his name is with a smile. The girl holds out her hand to Teiko. The hero introduces himself confusedly, extending his hand in return. Behind him stands a surprised Eren. Tua with burning eyes abruptly grabs Teiko's hand, throwing him over. The girl says her name is Tua Terra, curling in pain. The boy lies on the ground with a swollen red hand. His palm is shaking. Looking down at Teiko, the girl with a wide smile welcomes the guy to the team and promises he'll like it at their place. Rising to his knees, Teiko is still clenching his teeth in pain and holding onto his swollen arm. Eren and Tua are standing next to him. Teiko asks the girl why she did it, to which Tua, crossing her arms over her chest and smiling, replies that the newcomer just pissed her off. The girl laughs loudly. Grau, crossing her arms over her chest, calmly says that means the newcomer's name is Teiko. Shane confirms this. Grau says the kid deserves a promotion. Looking at Tua laughing and Teiko rubbing his swollen arm, the anti-depressors discuss the newcomer. Shane is surprised by Grau's words and reminds him that Teiko has just joined the ranks of the anti-depressors. His interlocutor replies that it doesn't matter, since the guy's ideals are pretty pure. Shane is surprised that Grau can praise anyone. Rolling his eyes, Grau says that his own ideals are purer anyway. Shane notes with an ironic smile that this is their Grau now. Someone calls Eren's name, and the boy turns around. Standing next to the serious Grau is a fox girl with purple eyes. She says that Corbin has a request for Eren and the newcomer. Teiko and Tua turn around questioningly as well. The fox girl with a thin, sharp tail is standing next to Eren. Teiko listens intently to their conversation. The girl says their agents found a grief-stricken mother on Lumley Street, and it's often the work of their enemies. But colleagues have reported that the woman's emotions may be enough to cause a buzz. So Corbin wants the guys to check it out. Teiko's eyes widen as he realizes that we're talking about the mother of that guy who turned into a Kypholomaniac and never made it home. Pointing a finger, Tua says that this albino lady is in charge of their training. Teiko remembers that her name is Nini and she's online all the time. Tua laughingly grabs Teiko by the hair from behind. She says the guy's cauldron is boiling. The hero shrieks in surprise and curses. Nini shows two fingers as a sign of good luck and Eren, calling Teiko by her last name, informs her that they have to go. Teiko confidently agrees. The boy arches his eyebrows as he sees Tua appear in front of him, asking if it's already time. The city street is lit up by sunlight. Teiko's voice is heard asking if the crying woman is within their purview and why can't they just leave her alone. Teiko and Eren quickly run down the street. The hero looks at his interlocutor in surprise upon hearing his response. Eren explains that sadness in public places is easily picked up by passers-by, which forms the perfect environment for buzzkills to occur. He says that although sadness is a private matter, those who bring it out in public can cause problems. A pensive Teiko replies that he is not very comfortable with this approach. He hears Eren's voice, who replies that he's not the only one who doesn't like it, but now the anti-depressor is starting to feel the buzzkillers' morale building up, which means they did the right thing coming. The heroes run up to an alleyway. In front of them are two silent characters. Teiko is musing about how he couldn't figure out what the strange feeling was. A man in a black suit, gloves, blue tie and wearing a cat mask raises his hand and greets the arriving heroes. His voice is heard informing them that the heroes have arrived on time, as the K-folk haven't shown up yet. But the problem is that this girl is ignoring them. A somber woman in a blue hoodie stands nearby, eyes downcast. Teiko lowers her eyes thoughtfully. Eren asks how long she's been standing like that. He hears a coworker's voice, who replies that it's been going on for about 5 minutes, as the girl has been trying not to be disturbed in the hopes that the antidepressants who arrived will be able to defuse the situation. A man in a white cat mask puts his hands in his pockets as he stands next to the silent woman. He turns around as his pig-masked colleague appears with a white bag in his hand and, bringing his hand to his mouth, shouts that he's finished. The newly arrived agent shows a flyer with the wanted guy's picture and data, and informs him that he ripped every single one of them off. In his hand is a flyer with the data and photo of a 17-year-old missing guy. The agent in the pig mask says that there were about 50 such flyers. The man is surprised that nothing has changed and the woman is standing in the same place she was standing when he left. He reasons that he doesn't want to use force because it would be too wrong. Teiko is shocked. The boy's eyes round in surprise. Noticing Teiko's reaction, Eren asks him what happened. The hero replies that he saw the guy and knows what happened to him. The woman's eyes go wide. She finds herself beside Teiko, grabbing him by the collar. The woman asks if he knows what happened to Mikey and demands that the guy tell her. The woman desperately asks him to tell her where her son has gone. Teiko tries to answer, but hesitates. Teiko's gaze is directed to the side. Eren silently waves her head affirmatively, allowing the boy to speak. After hesitating, Teiko replies to the woman that her son is dead. The guy tells the shocked mother that they are now trying to catch the killer. The woman's hands release the collar of the shocked Teiko. Eren watches the scene unfold. Agents in animal masks and black suits are also watching what's going on. Teiko stands in front of the woman, who clutches her head and screams her son's name in grief. The hero is surprised to notice that the air has become heavy. He does not have time to finish his thought when Eren, with an indifferent expression on her face, confirms what Teiko thought. The woman falls to her knees in grief, covering her face with her hands, and a huge red monster with one eye appears behind her. The antidepressors realize that this is the beginnings of a buzzkill. The monster looks intimidating. Eren's voice is heard saying that the Kypholom must be destroyed. Teiko's eyes turn red and he accepts the task. The boy rushes into battle. Teiko, with burning red eyes. Kypholom kicks the Kypholom with his foot in a leap. The woman stays in the same spot. Guy jumps up, pushing the monster aside. After landing, Teiko says firmly that when this is over, they need to help this woman. Eren, with a calm expression, tucks his hands in his pockets and heads over to Teiko. He says the guy made a wise decision to attack before the buzzsaw fully forms. But Eren is surprised that Teiko wants to help the woman and asks the guy why he wants to do it. Without turning around, Teiko replies that he wants the woman to forget about suffering forever. Looking at Teiko's burning red eyes, Eren reasons that the guy's motives are unclear to him, but the antidepressor sees nothing wrong with giving the newcomer leeway at first. A determined Teiko rushes forward, clenching his hands into fists. Eren hurries after him, warning the other antidepressors that they need to protect the woman until the guy's return. The co-workers accept the assignment. The woman remains seated on the ground behind the heroes' backs. As they run, Eren turns around to look at her. Near a building with air conditioners running by the windows, a grayish-red buzzsaw is budding. It is leaning on its yet-to-be-formed arms. Two shadows appear in front of the monster, greeting it. Teiko adopts a fighting stance and aggressively promises the monster that the two of them are about to punch it in the face, so the monster should make it easy for them. A calm Eren informs him that he's not going to fight. Teiko's eyes widen with surprise. He wants to understand why Eren would think that. The interlocutor replies that this monster is a second-level monster, which means that the guy and alone can calmly cope. In a half-whisper, the antidepressor adds that it won't be without difficulties. But still, Teiko bites his finger in thought. He thanks Eren for his trust. Kypholom rises, preparing to attack. The monster strikes, while Teiko tells Eren that he doesn't approve of his laziness. The guy reasons that his coworker is just going to shirk the battle. He doesn't notice the buzzkill's actions, focusing on talking to Eren and pointing a finger at him. The antidepressor keeps his gaze on the monster, ignoring Teiko's words. Noticing the buzzsaw's movement, he warns Teiko of the blow from the right. The guy doesn't have time to react to the Kypholom's punch to the face. The monster throws a hard punch. Teiko's head twitches, but he himself remains standing still. Eren is next to the hero. The antidepressor notes that the newcomer is holding his punch pretty well. Kypholom looks at his opponent puzzled with a huge eye, not understanding how he remained standing still after such a powerful punch. Teiko sighs and says that he now understands his enemy clearly and distinctly. The boy clenches his hand into a fist and holds it in front of him. Teiko's eyes burn red fire as he tells his opponent that the challenge is accepted. Teiko runs the back of his hand over his face. Eren reminds the newcomer to remember to destroy the core. The guy replies that he remembers to do so. The K-folk comes into motion. The monster stretches its long red arms forward. Teiko looks at his enemy contemptuously. The guy ducks down and his eyes watch his opponent's actions. Teiko makes a lightning-fast leap. He runs along the monster's outstretched arms. Suddenly, Teiko grabs the monster by one of its tentacle arms. The boy is puzzled. Teiko curses loudly as the long tentacle arm lifts him high above the ground. Clenching his teeth, the guy makes incomprehensible noises. With a sharp kick, he pushes himself away from the tentacle monster and jumps down. Kypholom is surprised. The monster's arms become short again. Teiko is puzzled. The monster launches its long tentacle arms toward the guy again. Teiko recoils, managing to dodge, and the tentacles fly over him. The guy lands on the ground, resting his hand on it, and sees the K-folk standing across from him with his long arms outstretched. Teiko covers his face with his hand and comments that it was a dirty trick, but he saw it coming. Kypholom stands still, looking questioningly in front of him. Teiko's gaze is focused. The guy is starting to realize something. Teiko abruptly snaps out of his seat and runs forward. He jumps, adopting a fighting stance and clenching his hands into fists. Guy says it will take time for the monster to get his hands back into position, which means he has a window to strike. Teiko lands in a fighting stance next to the enemy, who is standing still with his arms outstretched. Guy lands a powerful punch to the foe's body. Kypholom makes some strange noises. Teiko purses his lips in puzzlement. He stands there with his arm outstretched, clenched into a fist. Kypholom delivers a sharp kick, throwing his opponent backwards. Standing in front of Eren, a shocked Teiko can't understand why his punch didn't work, as he punched the monster right in the chin. The antidepressor replies that it's impossible to deal with the second level with fists alone, and advises the newcomer to use morale. Teiko kneels down and reminds Eren how he said it would take an emotional outburst, but he's already exhausted and doesn't know what to do in this case. The antidepressor replies that memories can trigger emotions too, and it should be easier now since Teiko has used this technique before. Teiko thinks about triggering an emotional outburst and realizes something. The boy growls in anger. With a battle cry, he rushes forward, clenching his fists. Kypholom throws Teiko aside again. Lying on the ground, the disgruntled guy calls Eren a liar. Hovering over the top, the antidepressor replies that those were feigned emotions, and the most effective way is to think of something the guy hates and that makes him furious. Teiko thinks about it, pressing his lips together and looking in front of him. The guy remembers the shadow of some fleeing man. He thinks of thieves. The buzzsaw's tentacles reach out to Eren, who calmly covers himself with a protective barrier, and asks the newcomer which thieves we're talking about. Clenching his hands into fists and throwing his head back, Teiko shouts in rage that he hates thieves. The boy is flaming with anger. Kypholom is puzzled. He stands in place with his arms outstretched, looking where the recoiling Teiko just stood. jumping up and standing over the monster. The boy remembers that when he was a kid he tried to help a homeless man and brought him stuff, but he just ripped the boy off and didn't even thank him. Teiko shouts angrily. Kypholoms stands in place with his tentacle arms outstretched. The boy fends off the blows, dealing damage to his enemy. Red energy blazes around him. Teiko says he only realized he was robbed when he needed the money himself. Teiko furiously fires back punches, thinking about the fact that that beggar robbed him. Eren thinks about the fact that Teiko is awakened by such trivia means that this isn't the first time the guy has used morality in combat, or that he's really that pissed off about the theft. Teiko jumps back, successfully dodging the enemy's punches, and lands on the road. In another jump, the guy lands a hard blow on the monster's arm. Teiko jumps again with a menacing look. He deftly moves between the buzzsaw's tentacles. The guy dodges as the monster leans in, executing another punch with his arm. Teiko's eyes burn red fire as he says that this is now his personal rage. The guy hits his opponent hard. He lands a powerful punch with his fist. Teiko with a menacing look commits several strong punches. Guy throws another punch. Kypholom ends up on the ground, making inarticulate noises, trying to catch his breath. Teiko says he's counting to 10. Guy looks questioningly in front of him. Eren is puzzled as well. Kypholome starts laughing loudly. Teiko is infuriated that his enemy is laughing at him. The guy is puzzled as the space is flooded with bright light. Kypholom's eye burns with yellow fire. Turning around, Teiko asks Eren what's going on and why the enemy is glowing. The Anti-Depressor replies that their opponent has become motivated. The glowing buzzsaw smiles broadly. Eren explains that any morale user can have their power stats increase due to the desire to accomplish a goal. The Anti-Depressor suggests that this K-folk was motivated by the fact that Teiko talks a lot, and thus, in his opinion, is not a threat. Looking into the K-folk's glowing eye, Teiko replies that this is very rude. Standing next to the newcomer, Eren politely asks him to step aside. A powerful punch occurs. Teiko is shocked. He stands behind Eren's back with his eyes and mouth open in surprise. The Anti-Depressor uses magic at this moment, putting his hand out in front of him. The heroes observe a multitude of purple circles on the spot where the K-folk was. Teiko asks Eren with interest if his inscriptions create barriers. The Anti-Depressor replies that it's a basic skill and asks the guy to look carefully in front of him. The startled Teiko's face is covered in sweat. He sees before him in a violet glow many one-eyed faces with huge toothy mouths. Each one has its mouth open. Looking at the monster's face, Eren says that the K-folk decided to split up to hide the core. A determined Teiko asks what he should do in this situation. Holding her hand in front of her and using morality, Eren says with a serious expression on her face to get the guy ready and the Anti-Depressor will help him with locating the core, since it's not something a newbie can do yet. Looking at the monster's many faces, Teiko replies that it sounded rude but fair. One of the monster's faces in the purple glow looks brighter than the others. Eren says he's found a real buzzkill. Shifting his gaze to his partner, Eren asks if Teiko is ready to complete the task. Teiko grabs his face with shaky hands and shakes his head, closing his eyes. The boy adopts a fighting stance and confidently answers in the affirmative to the Anti-Depressor standing nearby. One of the monster's heads lunges forward sharply. Teiko's eyes burn with red fire, puffing up his cheeks. The guy makes a strong kick, but the head of the buzzsaw flies past him. Turning around and seeing the monster rushing forward down the street, Teiko scolds unhappily. Staying where she is, Eren advises the guy to catch up to the monster quickly before it does something. Teiko accepts the order. The guy quickly rushes down the street after the flying monster, who makes strange noises and turns to his pursuer. Raising his head, Teiko watches the enemy's lightning-fast jump. Speeding up, the guy realizes that the monster keeps accelerating and worries that he won't be able to catch up to the buzzsaw. Teiko squints with indignation, remembering an unpleasant moment from the past. The monster's flying head picks up speed. In front of Teiko's eyes is a fleeing shadow. He remembers the laughing old man taking the dollar the boy gave him. Teiko goes into a rage, enraged at his enemy. The boy takes off lightning fast. Teiko attacks his enemy in a rage. Kypholom is surprised. The guy delivers a powerful blow to the monster. A huge pillar of energy forms in the middle of the city street. Teiko lands with a burning core in his hand. Guy turns around after seeing the explosion. Behind him, 3 characters are watching the scene. Teiko glows with joy and raises a thumbs up, reporting the mission accomplished. The agents in the pig and cat mask give a thumbs up, marveling at the guy. A woman stands next to them with her head down. One of the agents asks where Aaron is, and Teiko informs him that he should be walking over now. The woman stands behind him, clenching her teeth. The agent in the cat mask looks at the woman and tells Teiko, standing next to her, that she's still not reacting to anything. His pig-masked counterpart folds his arms across his chest and speculates that maybe they're the ones having trouble communicating. Teiko is surprised and asks if maybe he should try talking to her. The agents clarify if the guy is sure, and Teiko answers in the affirmative. The men look at Teiko in silence. As they leave, the agents wave goodbye, wishing the guy luck in this difficult case. They rejoice that they won't have to solve the problem anymore. Teiko approaches the woman with a smile and informs her that it's him again. The woman remains silent and her face is contorted with a grimace of pain and anger. The woman's eyebrows are drawn together at the bridge of her nose. Her teeth are clenched, and tears are streaming down her cheeks. Teiko presses her lips together and cringes, realizing that this isn't going to be easy. There are trash cans and boxes standing nearby, which brings the guy to mind. Teiko tells the woman that just yesterday he stood up for her son when he was pinned down in an alley by some sectarian. The woman clenches her fists and looks at Teiko in surprise, asking if he's the same guy. The hero realizes that the kid has managed to tell his mother about him. The woman confirms Teiko's guess and thanks him for saving her son. The guy replies that it's too early to thank him, because they are not finished yet. The woman is surprised and asks what this means, to which Teiko replies that the boy's killer is still at large. Teiko stands in front of the surprised woman, hands clenched into fists, and tells her to thank him when he gets revenge on that bastard for her son. The guy with the red eyes says it's his battle and the woman just needs to believe in him. The woman lowers her eyes, brooding. She punches Teiko in the chest with her fist. The woman tearfully says resolutely that Teiko dare not lose. The boy cringes at the thought of enemies and nods in agreement. Magical flashes surround Aaron. The woman asks what the guy's name is and Teiko says his name with a smile. It surprises him that the woman called the boy son. Smiling broadly, the woman tells Teiko that he has a beautiful name and thanks the lad. She promises to pray for the hero. Teiko resolutely clenches his fists and asks her to believe in him, because he will definitely punch the enemy in the face. He also promises the woman to pray for her, calling her Mom. The woman smiles, replying that Mikey used to call her that. Teiko interjects with a smile, not expecting an answer. The woman walks away. Aaron approaches the guy, praising him for a good job and asking where the woman went. Teiko replies that she must have gone home. The guy reasons that although her grief is very hard to deal with, he hopes that he was able to help the woman at least a little. Aaron silently listens to Teiko's words about how a woman needs someone to believe in during this difficult time, and he hopes to be that person. Turning around, Teiko says that he will try not to disappoint this woman or anyone. Covering her eyes, Aaron replies that's great, because being disappointed in their profession can be physically dangerous. Teiko clenches her fists and indignantly yells at Aaron for the anti-depressor turning things around as if the guy had to say it. Aaron calmly replies that you shouldn't make promises you can't keep. The anti-depressor reminds her that they are distracted and the documents are waiting. Teiko agrees. The city street is quiet. A man with a broom stands at the entrance to a two-story building. An elderly man is thoughtfully clutching a mop in his hands. Teiko and Aaron appear behind him. Teiko's eyes widen in surprise. The boy calls out to the man, referring to him as Mr. Segan. The disgruntled man turns around and asks what he wants from him. Teiko emotionally calls out the man's name, smiling broadly. Seeing the guy, the man's face lights up with a smile and he shouts out the hero's name. Mr. Segan and Teiko run to meet each other, arms wide open and smiling contentedly. Suddenly, the man slaps Teiko hard in the face. The satisfied man asks the boy how he is doing. An overjoyed Teiko replies that everything is fine. The man asks how Marissa is doing and assumes that she and the guy should have gotten engaged by now. Teiko replies that the girl is doing well too, but doesn't understand why Mr. Segan is asking about her. Aaron silently watches from the sidelines, twisting Teiko with one hand and mussing his hair with the other. The man stops abruptly, noticing the anti-depressor. He frowns his eyebrows, says there are no buzzards here, and demands that the intruder get the hell out. Teiko hastily explains that Aaron is with him. The anti-depressor introduces himself, giving his name, and explains that Teiko recently joined their ranks, so they're here to pick up the guy's papers. The shocked man asks Teiko if the guy has really become an anti-depressor. Teiko replies with a satisfied smile that he is. The man asks in bewilderment how the guy got there. Eren replies that this information is classified. Mr. Sagine sighs unhappily. Someone approaches the heroes. A little guy with a candy in his mouth asks Mr. Sagine who it is, pointing his finger at Teiko. The man calls the boy Eustace and asks in surprise what the kid is doing here. Crossing his arms over his chest, Teiko smugly replies that he is the destroyer of evil, the living legend Teiko Densetsu. Rolling his eyes, the kid calls the boy a sucker. Looking at the boy, Teiko shockingly interjects. His jaw drops down in surprise. Mr. Segan raises his arms above his head, taking a fighting stance, and also calls himself the destroyer of evil, as well as the greatest hero of all time. Eustace admiringly clenches his hands into fists, waving them around, and says that Mr. Segan is very cool. The man stands in a fighting stance while the boy and Teiko watch from the sidelines. Teiko says in indignation that Mr. Sagine made it all up, because the old man can't be cooler than him. The boy replies that the man put his heart into his speech, and Teiko wasn't sincere, so he's a sucker. Approaching Mr. Segan, who is still standing in a fighting stance with a wide smile, Eren asks if they can pick up Densetsu's papers. The man answers in the affirmative. A tall tree can be seen through the window. Mr. Segan's voice is heard, telling Teiko that being an antidepressor is pretty dangerous and asking the hero if the guy is sure he wants to be one. Walking down the hall behind the older man next to Eren, Teiko confidently replies that he can't say no, since they have a huge paycheck and the guy will get so much that he can even make donations. After looking at the guy without turning his head, the man interrupts him and asks if money is all Teiko cares about. After thinking about it, the guy replies that it's not everything, but somewhere around 60%. Looking at Teiko walking next to Eren, Mr. Sagine asks what about the other 40%. Teiko replies that it's an opportunity to protect people. The man asks if the guy has a plan. Teiko replies that there is no plan, but he is going to try his best. Mr. Sagine replies that there's no way that would happen, because losses at their very core can't be avoided, as sometimes it's just impossible to save someone. Lowering his eyes and thinking about it, Teiko replies that in this case, he'll do what he can, and he'll start by protecting the orphanage until he becomes a warlock. The boy says he doesn't know how long that will take, but he's going to try his best. Eren explains that he'll have to move up in the ranking system and get approval from the government, so it will take quite a while. Without turning around, Mr. Segan asks Teiko what his rank is. The boy replies that he doesn't know that yet. Eren explains that Teiko will now get the 4th lowest rank after finally joining the ranks of the Anti-Depressors. Teiko presents a ranking chart where all the ranks are divided into highest and lowest, with the 4th being the most recent. Teiko is disappointed to have to start at the bottom. Eren looks at the boy in silence. Mr. Segan points his finger at Teiko and laughs loudly at the fact that the guy has a lot of work ahead of him. The heroes walk down the hallway. Mr. Sagine says that Teiko reminds him of his brother. An elderly man is looking for papers in a large closet. Teiko asks how he is like Mr. Segan's relative. The man replies that his brother is also greedy for money. Teiko is disappointed by this answer. Eren looks at the man in silence, holding out an envelope with documents. Mr. Sagine says that his brother had a good heart, but now he doesn't know where his relative is, maybe even dead already. A disappointed Teiko takes the envelope of papers. Eren looks at him. Mr. Segan frowns. He yells loudly at the confused Teiko to tell the guy to keep his composure and smile, not to spoil the atmosphere. The guy demands that the old man not end his stories so depressingly. Forgetting what Eren's name is, Mr. Segan says that the antidepressor should make sure that Teiko doesn't ruin the mood for others as well. Eren replies with a calm expression that she can't guarantee anything. The old man yells loudly, calling the antidepressor by name. As they leave the building, Eren, who is carrying the documents, turns to Teiko, calling him by his last name. The boy interjects. Eren reminds him that last night Teiko expressed his desire to fight to protect Greenville. The guy confirms that he did. The antidepressor says that all of his co-workers want the same for him. Teiko has tears in his eyes, covering his face with his hands. The guy says he already knows that and apologizes for inadvertently overhearing the antidepressor's conversation. Eren replies that it's no big deal and explains that he's devised a plan that the guy might be interested in. Eren comes down the stairs without saying anything. Teiko yells, asking if it's true. The antidepressor replies that they'll discuss it when they get back. Eren turns around when he hears Teiko calling for him, waving his hands and covering his eyes. Teiko thanks his coworker loudly. Eren says they need to stop by the cafe and asks if the guy wants to order something. As they descend the stairs and follow Eren down the walkway, Teiko at first resents that the antidepressor could have at least said, "You're welcome." But then the guy confirms that stopping by the diner is a great plan, and asks if he can order a Big Mon. Eren answers in the affirmative and Teiko is loudly and emotionally happy about it. The action unfolds in the diner. Corbin asks with a satisfied smile if the guys have tried dipping potatoes in mon cream. Hoaro replies with a skeptical look that it sounds creepy. Corbin says the guy is missing a lot. The antidepressors are sitting at a table in a cafe. Nearby are tables with blue couches and vases of yellow flowers. Corbin, in a white and pink suit, leans his elbows on the table and eats fries. Hoaro looks at him puzzled. Eren eats the fries in silence. Teiko leans on the table with one hand, looking at Hoaro. There are containers of juice and chicken nuggets on the table. Corbin breaks the silence, reminding his friends that they called him for more than just food, which means business needs to be discussed. Hoaro says he has a question for Teiko. The antidepressor says it would be nice to leave the guy alone, since he's not good at analyzing. Hoaro reminds him that Teiko somehow found out about Regalo's abilities yesterday because some guy tipped him off. The antidepressor asks for more details about it. Teiko waves his hands, remembering that he was going to talk about it himself. The guy says that he blacked out, and when he came to, there was some red character in front of him saying stuff. Teiko recalls that he wasn't wearing any clothes and thinks it was a prank, covering himself with his arms. Corbin laughs. Hoaro folds his arms across his chest and looks at Teiko skeptically, saying it's clear. The boy asks loudly if the antidepressor doesn't believe him. Hoaro replies that he believes the hero and wants to know if that red character said anything else. Teiko hesitates, looking up. He says that if he remembers correctly, that weirdo called Regalo's hand a tearful palm. Corbin says that's a very strange name. Hoaro calmly accepts Teiko's answer and says that this red creature is definitely a buzzard. He asks the hero to remember how many fingers the monster had. Teiko tenses up a lot, thinking about it. He rubs his chin with his hand and sweat runs down his face. Hoaro says he gets the hint. The antidepressor lowers his eyes and rubs his chin too, thinking. He says it remains to be seen how this monster got into the guy's mind. Folding his arms across his chest, Corbin says inarticulately with his mouth full that's what he's worried about, pointing a finger at the warlock. Hoaro grudgingly tells him not to talk with his mouth full. Corbin turns to Eren, asking if he has any ideas and calling his friend a walking encyclopedia. Eren says that since people touched by the tearful palm turn into buzzards, then there's a suggestion that Teiko's transformation was interrupted and left a converted piece of personality in his mind. Teiko is surprised to hear this. Hoaro and Corbin look at each other in surprise. Accepting Eren's version of events, Corbin, with his mouth full, teases Teiko about the kayfolk hiding in the guy's head. Teiko cries out in frustration, assuring him that the monster has no place there. Hoaro rubs his chin thoughtfully. He argues that since morality comes from reason, this version could be true. Eren calmly says that the nature of the phenomenon is so mysterious that it's hard to draw any conclusions. Corbin rises abruptly above the table and says with a satisfied wide smile that they are now one step closer to solving the mystery about Regalo's powers. He wants to tell the rest of the antidepressors about it. Hoaro asks not to talk about Teiko Olha. Corbin says they will because their colleague is on vacation. Teiko and Eren listen intently to their interlocutors. Teiko asks in surprise why Olha is not allowed to know about this. Corbin laughs, hesitating to answer. Hoaro and Eren simultaneously reply that Olha is a radical. Corbin, with a wide smile, asks Teiko to let him know if that red type out of his head shows up again. The charmer wishes everyone good luck during tomorrow's operation. Looking up, Eren thanks his friend. Hoaro joins him. Teiko remains silent, pensive. The hero rubs his chin, leaning on his hand. 2 days pass. The city is in shambles. Pillars of dust cover the dilapidated buildings. The TV announces that the program will be interrupted for an urgent news bulletin. The announcer reports that the kayfolk have attacked the city en masse. He clarifies the information that a large number of witnesses are reporting level 1 and level 2 kayfolk flooding the streets. The announcer urges the residents of the city not to leave safe places unnecessarily. A red flying kayfolk moves through the air. A gray skull-shaped monster flies ahead. mummy-like monsters move down the street. The announcer informs the people of the city that the anti-depressors are working tirelessly to resolve the situation. He asks the people to remain calm and follow further instructions when they become available. The announcer, wearing a business suit and a blue polka dot tie with a calm expression, says that the screen shows a sketch of the man who is responsible for the attack on the town. At this time, a pencil drawing is broadcast on the screen behind his back that very remotely resembles Regalo. The news anchor asks the residents of the town to proceed immediately to cover and report the whereabouts of the perpetrator if they see someone who looks like him. The man in dark clothing grins, turning the man into a buzzkill using a magical violet glow. Regalo looks at the screen outside and sneers at the fact that the portrait doesn't look like one at all. With a satisfied smirk, he expresses his hope that those two will show up soon, as he doesn't want anyone else to find them first and dreams of meeting them in person. He recalls the two heroes he fought earlier and thinks about how he has yet to see the limit of Hotaro's powers, and Teiko managed to survive the tearful palm. Laughing snidely, Regalo thinks about the fact that these two have been presented to him by fate itself, because defeating them will allow him to create as many children as he wishes. There is an energy drain from the man's tearful palm. In front of him is a monster with burning eyes. With a satisfied smile, Regalo says he feels pressure, and that can only mean one thing. In front of Regalo is a huge blue monster with hooves, giant hands and long ears. The man realizes that he has created a level 3 Kypholom. Regalo greets the monster and says that fate is preparing him for the coming battle. Taking the Kypholom's huge hand in his own, Regalo asks if the monster remembers what those opponents looked like and if he has memorized their faces. The man demands that the monster find them and bring them to him. Regalo admonishes the buzzard, telling him that he must kill everyone else who comes across his path if necessary. The monster recalls the faces of Teiko and Hoaro. He manages to utter one word, saying that he understood. Sounds of impact and destruction are heard. The balconies of one of the buildings are destroyed. A gray faceless buzzsaw in a suit lands on the ground, breaking with his hands. There is nothing on the monster's face. The energy-using antidepressor sarcastically asks if the monster is still twitching. Focusing on morale, Shane produces a weapon and smiles broadly. He rejoices at what is happening, believing that some fun has emerged. Gambling anti-depressors Tua and Shane, with smiles, urge the buzzkill to fear them. Tua suggests that this monster is of the protective type, though it looks very squishy. The faceless monster with long arms and legs looks very skinny. Crouched down, the K-folk stands in front of the antidepressors in the driveway. Tua thinks that means with this enemy, you can get off to the fullest with no rush. The girl asks Shane if he's ready. Her partner replies emphatically that he's as ready as he's ever been. Taking a fighting stance, Tua Terra with the third highest rank introduces herself. Shane Hander, who has the fourth highest rank, swings his blade, and as he does so calls out his name. Standing behind the guy's back, a disgruntled Tua resents Shane for forgetting his speech. The girl reminds him that he should have said about goals and motivation to make the strike perfect. Holding his blade in front of him, Shane turns around and grudgingly says that he lives as the card goes. The monster tenses up as he listens to the antics of the antics squabble. Tua grudgingly asks why Shane wanted to be on the same team with her then. The guy replies puzzled that he doesn't know. Tua tells him to score, sticking out his long tongue. The demon quickly rushes forward. Tua cheers as the opponent advances. A strike occurs. Swinging his sword, Shane fights his foe. The guy uses his signature kick. The anti-depressor tries to use a split move, but his baffled opponent manages to dodge. Guy lands with a wide grin, and realizes he's flown by. Standing right in front of the attacking buzzsaw, Tua demands that Shane stop croaking. Using morale, the girl is angry at her partner and demands that he act normal for at least 5 minutes. Tua directs the force against the enemy and he takes off without his head. Kypholom lies in the middle of the street in a pool of blood. His head is ripped off. Shane congratulates his partner on a great punch and claps his hands. He thinks the girl should be thanking him for making her angry. Tua replies that she won't even think about it. The girl angrily waves her fists and says that her partner is getting on her nerves and she doesn't like it. Shane yawns boredly and says that's enough for today. The guy points his finger at the figure of a man sitting against the wall. He says that Aaron is also suffering from bullshit, but Tua doesn't say anything to him. The girl yells loudly, demanding an answer from Aaron. The antidepressor leaning against the wall looks up. He has a smartphone in his hand in a case in the shape of a sad rabbit. Aaron, who has the second lowest rank, excuses himself to take a break and recommends his friends to rest as well. Because if you spend all your morale on attacking, you can be left with no defense. Rolling her eyes, a disgruntled Tua comments that if her partners weren't chilling, they would have finished long ago. The girl says that if the other antidepressors are too lazy to fight, it's even better, because she'll get more money. Shane ironically wonders if the girl is saving up money for new lizard toys. Tua growls unhappily and yells at her partner that he has had enough of her. At that moment, a huge shadow appears over the house. The girl looks up and is greatly surprised. Shane sits down with his head down and his hand on the ground. He gathers his morals. Energy flashes flicker. The asphalt turns into a huge pillar that rises into the sky with the help of Shane's morale. The guy points his weapon in front of him. Shane touches his weapon with his hand. The guy points forward with a ring of morale. As he rises into the air, his weapon destroys the buzzsaw flying over the rooftops. The defeated opponent falls to the ground with a violent rumble. This is watched by Tua in surprise. Aaron stares silently at the phone screen. Shane stands nearby with his arms folded across his chest, pointing a finger at his partner. Tua menacingly informs him that he's not going to thank him because he was originally supposed to fight like that. Aaron replies that the girl's ingratitude plays into her partner's hands, because Shane's original plan was to use up all the morale and go rest. Shane asks if that wasn't obvious. A grimace of indignation appears on the girl's face. Tua falls to her knees exhaustedly, lowers her head and keeps her hands on the ground. The girl complains that she wants to go home. She hears Shane's voice, who informs her that Dago has a new Veto's out. The guy rejoices, as there hasn't been anything new in a while. Aaron looks at the screen of his smartphone. He writes a message to Teiko, asking the guy how the situation is. At that moment, a confused Teiko, who has the fourth lowest rank, turns to someone. The guy tells the mister that there's a bit of chaos in the city and the antidepressors need space to fight. He tentatively suggests to his interlocutor to take shelter somewhere. The older man silently presses his lips together and looks around. Teiko calls out to him again. The old man abruptly starts shouting, outraged that the guy addressed him so disrespectfully. He admonishes Teiko, demanding that he respect his elders. Hunched over, the old man walks away, lurching and resenting the fact that children are now completely unscrupulous. Teiko stares at the old man in silence. The boy winks in puzzlement. Teiko recalls discussing the antidepressant plan. Sitting at a table in the cafe, Aaron was mentoring the boy. He said the rookie's job would be to help the agents keep the streets clear of intruders. The kid's area of responsibility would be the area near Greenville. There's a lot of agents standing around the shelter building. Someone is heading for the steps. Teiko recalls the words of Aaron, who promised that no one would be able to pass unnoticed, as there would be agents standing around the perimeter of the shelter to control the situation. One of the agents wearing an animal mask shouts towards a girl who is walking up the steps. He asks where the girl is going and if she hasn't heard the warnings. The girl in a green hoodie and with red hair jerks at the sharp shout. Marissa, wearing bright yellow sneakers, black leggings and carrying a backpack behind her back, hides her hands in her pockets and grudgingly replies that she heard everything and would have left a long time ago if she hadn't been slowed down. The girl explains that she needs to pick up something. The agent in the dog mask asks the girl not to delay. Folding his arms across his chest, he orders the mouse-masked agent to escort the girl home afterward. The mouse-masked agent asks his interlocutor not to yell and resents that Nini is the one who put him in charge. Teiko remembers Aaron apologizing to him for this situation being a bit out of line with the guy's expectations. But he's still a rookie, so it's important for the team to ensure his own safety as well. Teiko gives a thumbs up with a smile and replies that it's fine and it sounds super. The guy cringes, looking at his smartphone screen. He sees a chat with Aaron, where the antidepressor asks how the newcomer is doing. Teiko sends a reply message, honestly admitting that the situation is the worst. The guy adds a crying emoticon. In the alley between houses, someone's conversations can be heard. The guy asks someone how much he made yesterday. His interlocutor replies that 5,000. 3 guys are sitting against the wall. One of them is wearing gray shorts and a pink t-shirt. The other is wearing black pants and a blue sweatshirt. The guy who sits in the middle is wearing a lettuce print t-shirt, graphite pants, red sneakers and the same color cap. The guy in the pink t-shirt is surprised and asks how he could have gotten the whole $5,000 unless his buddy pushed the merchandise to the president himself. The guy in the center asks not to yell so loud. His friend in the blue sweatshirt says there's a question. A guy with a crooked nose and hair gathered in a bun asks his friends what they think elders do. He clarifies that he's always wondered that. His black friend with dreadlocks replies that they do all sorts of tedious business stuff. Fixing his cap, he says he wanted to let his friends know something about business. The guy says he lost his most valued customer because he hasn't seen her in a while. The chubby guy with curly hair replies that that really sucks and asks if the customer overdosed. His interlocutor says he doesn't know that, but suggests that it's possible. At this point, Teiko peeks out from behind the wall of the house, watching the company in surprise. He calls out to the unfamiliar guys. The guys look up shocked. Teiko explains that it's dangerous outside now, so the guys should hide somewhere. The surprised guys look amongst themselves. The guys start laughing at Teiko. They call him names and ask him if his vacation has already started. Adopting a fighting stance and clenching his hands into fists, the hero replies that he is an anti-depressor. The group of guys think it's even funnier that way. They ask what's wrong with him and why risk his life for pennies. A black guy approaches Teiko and suggests he join them because they have real money and don't have to dress up like a clown. The stranger explains that you just have to carry the goods to different people. Teiko asks why he would do that. Looking with disdain, Teiko says that it's better to live a normal, honest life than to push crap. Teiko's gaze is directed somewhere to the side as the guy thinks about the fact that it's hardly his job to moralize to these assholes. He decides to let the cops deal with them, but the hero gets one idea. The guys don't leave. Dark-skinned stranger with a sneer asks Teiko what the fun of his job is. His friend doesn't like this conversation and offers to leave. The dark-skinned guy agrees with his friend and they leave. Teiko is puzzled, but doesn't turn around. The hero abruptly turns around and demands that the guys return immediately. The dark-skinned guy smokes quietly, and his friends say that Teiko isn't a fed and just bullshitted them about a normal life. They think the guy might have changed his mind. Teiko's eyes round in surprise. He runs forward quickly and decisively. Teiko swings around, staying close to his interlocutors. They fearfully ask what he is up to. At that moment, a small buzzsaw with eyes burning green light appears above the heads of the guys. After a violent impact, all the characters fly apart. The dark-skinned guy's cap flies off in flight. Teiko is puzzled. The guys are surprised at what happened. Behind their backs is a buzzsaw. Teiko laughs mockingly and asks his companions why they are no longer smiling. Leaning on the pavement, the Kypholom calls Teiko an asshole. Teiko watches with an indifferent expression as his recent interlocutors run away in panic. He remembers how just now the dark-skinned guy had offered to join them with a smile because they had real dough rolling around and didn't need to look like a clown. Teiko is furious, yelling after the fleeing drug dealer, telling the asshole not to fuck with his style. Kypholom asks in surprise what he's talking about. Teiko's eyes light up with red fire, and the guy jumps, clenching his hand into a fist. The hero delivers a powerful punch. Teiko lands after the punch, and there is smoke coming from his fist. The guy tries to remember something. In front of him on the ground are the remains of a monster. Teiko recalls Aaron's words about Regalo's kayfolk not having a core because they used to be human. The boy is upset. Standing in the middle of the courtyard, Teiko curses loudly. He realizes that the junkies have escaped. Teiko smiles cartoonishly. The drug dealers are walking down the street. One of them says that the kayfolk showed up just in time, and the other replies that they were lucky. They are surprised to freeze in place when someone demands that the criminals don't move. Two cops, a red-haired guy and a dark-skinned girl, stand next to the police car, holding guns in front of them. They demand that the criminals put their hands up. The drug dealers raise their hands and don't understand how the cops could burn them. They believe it was because one of them was yelling at the entire neighborhood. Teiko informs them with a gloating smile that he gave the cops a little clue. Standing next to the cops and putting his hand on the cop's shoulder, Teiko says that he and his fellow officers are on the same page. The cop gives the guy a disgruntled look and asks him to take his hand off his shoulder. The criminals grin with rage and call Teiko a bastard. Teiko waves at them and winks wryly with a smile, wishing them good luck. A huge blue kayfolk with long ears and yellow eyes breathes loudly. The monster is in the middle of a ruined part of the city. A defeated agent lies nearby. Another living agent wearing a penguin mask tries to contact his colleagues and requests help from anyone who can hear him. Lying on the ground, the agent reports that there is a level 3 kayfolk next to him who came out of nowhere. The anti-depressor has no time to speak when a dark shadow looms over him. The monster attacks the agent in a rage and blood splatters everywhere. Kypholom asks with burning eyes where the ones he needs are. Meanwhile, Elsewhere in the city, Teiko asks with a satisfied smile what his reward is. The girl cop closes the door of the squad car, and the guy officer holds out something to Teiko. The hero thanks him. As they drive away, the cops thank Teiko for his hard work, and he clutches the reward in his hand. Teiko unclenches his hand and is surprised to see what is in it. In the palm of his hand is a plastic commendation badge from the police. The boy cries out indignantly, unhappy with such a reward. After all, he's not a child. Teiko exhales, clutching the badge in his hand. He hopes that he can at least sell the award. At that moment, the announcer addresses the people of the town. He informs them that a level 3 kayfolk has been discovered in the city and asks that no one leave any safe places. Teiko is surprised to hear about the level 3 monster. The announcer repeats the message once more about the presence of a level 3 kayfolk in the streets of the city. Teiko tensely looks around, but doesn't notice that at this moment there is a giant blue monster behind him. When the announcer reminds him not to leave the safe areas under any circumstances, Teiko cautiously turns around and clenches his hand into a fist. The boy's gaze reflects panic. Teiko doesn't have time to react in any way when the demon grabs him by the neck and lifts him above the ground. The guy grunts and flails his arms, trying to get out of the monster's huge paw. Kypholoms says with burning eyes that Teiko is the one. The guy realizes that the monster is very strong and croaks as he tries to get out of Kypholoms' giant paw. At this point, the monster's gaze changes and he looks puzzled. The anomaly inside Teiko that allowed Regalo's abilities to be bypassed was noticed by the demon. Regalo originally gave the monster a command to catch the guy, but the morality inside the buzzkill changed its task. The demon clutched Teiko harder in its huge paw. Holding his outstretched arm in front of him, the monster makes strange noises. It freezes in place, after which it is about to fulfill its new task of killing its opponent. Teiko clenches his teeth harder as the monster shakes him. The demon with burning eyes swings his hand in which he clutches the guy. Kypholom makes a strong throw. Teiko crashes into the glass building with a violent rumble. A cloud of smoke forms. Teiko flies down. The monster with purple eyes flies towards his opponent, putting a huge paw in front of him and about to grab the falling guy. The demon abruptly grabs Teiko in flight. He makes another sharp throw and the guy flies to the side. Teiko lands on the roof of the car, which has crumbled from the powerful impact. Teiko's masked alter ego Teiko is sitting in the theater auditorium, where he sees everything happening to the guy on the screen. He decides that everyone already knows about him. The red-masked guy reasons that this could be a problem, and if Teiko doesn't get up, trouble awaits them both. Kypholom appears abruptly out of the cloud of smoke and spreads his arms out, hovering over the lying Teiko. Kypholom raises his arms, about to strike. Teiko rolls his eyes exhaustedly. Suddenly the guy's gaze becomes focused. Teiko manages to dodge at the last moment and Kypholom strikes the car parked in the parking lot. With another jump, Teiko manages to get to his feet, crouching down and resting one hand on the pavement. The disgruntled monster asks why the guy is resisting. Teiko replies in anger that he's not going to die. The guy gets angry and rubs his bruised back. Teiko has a vapor on his face. The guy thinks about the fact that his opponent was incredibly strong. The hero thinks about the strength of his morals, but doesn't have time to finish the thought. Kypholom with burning eyes looms over the guy again, about to make another strike. The monster strikes back. Spinning in the air, Teiko flies off to the side. Blood comes out of the boy's mouth. He realizes there's no time to think. Teiko manages to group himself in flight to land on his feet. The guy jumps over the street fence. He notices rocks flying from above. Teiko continues forward at high speed and the boulders land on the pavement behind him. The guy notices the shadow of a buzzsaw chasing him behind his back. The enemy moves very fast and reaches forward, intending to catch Teiko. The guy anxiously turns around without stopping. Teiko is about to jump. Using morale, the monster attacks the guy. Teiko tries to dodge. The guy manages to leap aside and land on his feet. The blow lands on the spot where Teiko was just standing. The monster manages to grab the guy, who waves his arms around angrily. Teiko gets hit in the face and blood sprays out of his mouth. The demon gets on his hands and launches his opponent into flight with his foot. Teiko flies with great speed. The guy lands on the roof of a moving police car on the road. A dent forms on the roof of the police car, which can be seen from inside. The red-haired cop asks what it was. His surprised partner, who is driving the auto, replies that she doesn't know. In the back seat are the arrested drug dealers in handcuffs. One of them asks the girl driver to push harder on the gas pedal because he doesn't want to die here. The policewoman doesn't like this treatment. She grudgingly reminds the detainee that he is not in a cab. At that moment, Teiko's face appears in the window, saying that he'd hate to admit it, but that criminal is right because they have a level 3 kayfolk on their tail. Teiko is riding on the roof of a police car. The criminal tells the cop girl that he was right, but then stops talking and asks Teiko in bewilderment where he came from. The hero replies that being here helped him get high. The guy says that he has no idea how to defeat the monster, so the criminals better sit still and don't move. The monster's body is pierced by golden-colored energy. He directs a destructive stream of light in front of him. Teiko cries out fearfully. The criminals silently lower their eyes. The police officers are confused and alarmed. Teiko is still on the roof of the car. All the heroes begin to yell in unison. The hero is trying to figure out how the monster even got such powers. He interrupts his thought, forcing himself to collect himself. Looking at the monster blazing with fiery energy, Teiko remembers how the kayfolk were going to kill the enemy. The boy believes that the monster was talking about him, which means he is the only target. Teiko realizes that there is only one way to test his hunch. He yells loudly, urging the driver to stop the car. The girl cop interjects in bewilderment, not understanding why he would do that. She hears Teiko's voice asking her to trust him and saying he has a plan. The car brakes abruptly and Teiko jumps off the roof onto the road. The guy leans against the car with his arms. The monster prepares to strike. Teiko tenses up and puffs up his cheeks, trying to move the car. The guy sharply pushes the car aside and it ends up in the other lane. A stream of fire passes between Teiko and the car. Looking at the car, the guy yells at the driver, urging him to gas up. The demon's shadow ends up next to Teiko. The monster's body glows with golden fire again. Turning around, Teiko realizes he was right, but hopes the monster has no more surprises. The boy's hands are shaking. He notices he's shaking and his body is breaking. Looking into the monster's fire-burning eyes, the guy realizes that this buzzsaw is much stronger than the ones he has fought before. Teiko's eyes light up with red fire, and he reminds himself that he wasn't sitting still either. Kypholom lets out a stream of fire from his mouth. Standing next to the monster, Teiko holds his hand in front of him. The guy manages to defend himself. The space is distorted. The narrator talks about motivation. Kypholom builds up morale. The narrator says that after receiving a new order, the monster has given all his energy to carry it out and intends to kill the enemy. Teiko is also building up energy. His eyes burn with red fire. The narrator says that Teiko, for his part, is doing his best to keep himself alive. He supplements the story with the information that if two morality users have opposite motivations to each other, their battle takes on a completely different coloration and it is called the Battle of Ideals. Two energies collide in battle. The narrator says that it's not any physical stats that decide everything now, but only the strength of beliefs. But unfortunately Teiko has a hard time pulling against the ideals of the tearful palm. Opposing energies mix in space and silhouettes of opponents are seen. Teiko is injured, but endures the pain by clenching his teeth. Blood spatters fly around the sides. The monster prepares to strike. He punches Teiko in the stomach with his fist. Blood spatters from the boy's mouth. The monster looks up, jumping up. He tosses Teiko into the air and lands on the ground, breaking himself with his hand. Teiko's eyes roll up. Kypholom waves his fists, gathering morale. His body glows again. The demon directs a huge stream of fire upwards. In the middle of the city, a beam of fire can be seen piercing the sky. The fiery morale grabs Teiko and he falls to the ground at the feet of the buzzsaw. The monster is surprised. Lowering his head, the demon looks at Teiko lying on the ground in a fiery glow. The monster doesn't understand why his opponent isn't dead. Tears of bitterness roll down the buzzard's cheeks. He complains to his father that he has lost. The monster raises his head up and pulls his arms to his sides, then lets out a horrible growl of frustration. Teiko is still lying on the ground next to him. In the middle of the city, two buzzards stand on a bridge, on and under which is a roadway and cars are parked. Tents are placed under the bridge. A Kypholom in blue garb and with tentacles on its head, as well as its square purple congener with 3 eyes, 6 legs and the image of a human on its body, begin to growl loudly at the same time. In the car, a man wearing a black business suit, small dark glasses, and a blue tie sits in the passenger seat. He has black hair, a pointy nose with a hunchback and a small beard. Standing next to the car is a jock in an orange Hawaiian shirt. He laments that he shouldn't have driven here for 2 second-tier buzzards. The man in the suit asks him not to get the car dirty. The thug squeezes his hand, building up morale. He places both kayfolk in a fire trap. The man thrusts his arm forward, directing a stream of energy at his enemies. Golden flames glow around his hand, and his opponents are blown apart. The pink contents of the buzzsaws fly straight towards the car. The passenger curses loudly, sitting in the car with the windows splattered with the monster's innards. The angry man in the suit croaks and points his finger in front of him. He asks his interlocutor if he remembers what was asked of him and why he is trying to piss him off. The dark-skinned man with glasses and a small earring in his ear turns around with a smile. All of his clothes are splattered with the insides of the buzzards. Alder Goodwin, who is the second sorcerer of Eastern True Area, tells the man that he should stop whining and that the contents of the monsters will soon evaporate. Alder Goodwin's eyes glow with an orange light as he tells his comrade that he has noticed something. Looking through his glasses, the sorcerer sees two lights, a large purple one and a much smaller red one. He determines that there is a third-level character ahead, and the identity of the second character leaves Alder confused. Examining the red glow, the sorcerer is puzzled as to who it could be. He thinks that creepy Corbin has taken someone to him again, forgetting to warn him. Standing on the bridge in front of the soiled car, Alder rubs his head thoughtfully. The man realizes that whoever it was, he is now fighting a level 3 alone, and that is commendable. The sorcerer wishes the guy luck and hopes that he manages to get the buzzsaw. A disgruntled man in a suit tells Alder, looking out the window, that he's used to a quiet and peaceful life without him. The sorcerer replies that the city is in total chaos, and he's only been gone for 5 days. He offers to imagine what would happen if he didn't return now. Teiko's red alter ego stares at the one-eyed monster. Alder senses something and turns around. The man in the suit stares questioningly, lifting half of the broken wine bottle in his hand. Alder says he felt something strange and it might be about the newcomer. He offers to go and see what's going on. The man in the suit nervously adjusts his glasses. He says he understands, but maybe it's time for Alder to get off the car. He wonders where the sorcerer got the bottle from. He's coded. After all, Alder stands on the roof of the car and silently drinks the wine. The level 3 blue monster continues to cry and apologizes to his father for letting him down. Kypholom holds a police car above his head. The drug dealers scream frightened that they don't want to die and ask to be uncuffed. The girl cop replies that there is no way she will do that. One of the criminals asks where that guy is, meaning Teiko, and if he's going to rescue them. The demon throws the car forward with tremendous force. The criminals scream fearfully while in the flying car. The policeman squirms in his seat. His colleague grips the steering wheel tighter, clenching his teeth. The car flies towards the road. Suddenly, a shadow appears in front of the car. Someone's hands pick up the car in flight. The people in the car are greatly puzzled. Red Teiko in the form of a skeleton asks the guys if they are okay. Everyone in the car begins to scream loudly in fear. Teiko screams too, not realizing what's going on. The guy flies off to the side as the car gasses up and drives forward. Lying on the ground, Teiko grabs his horns, which are in the place of his eyes. The guy doesn't realize what's wrong with his face. Seeing his hands, he thinks he has become a skeleton. A 3-tiered buzzsaw approaches him. The surprised monster realizes that his opponent has started to look different, getting to his feet and adopting a fighting stance. Teiko advises his foe not to relax and informs him that he feels fine. The monster smiles happily, seeing his target in front of him, throwing himself at the guy. The buzzsaw informs his father that he got a second chance. Teiko asks his opponent if he thinks he got a second chance to kill his opponent. The guy throws a hard punch to the kayfolk. Teiko manages to hold off the opponent who lunged at him. The monster's arm bends. Looking at his arm, the Kypholom starts making loud noises. Teiko is surprised, howling in pain. The Kypholom clasps his broken arm with his other hand. Teiko stands next to his enemy and tries to figure out where he got such strength from. The guy looks at his hand and finds it odd that he hit his enemy with a hand that was broken a minute ago. Teiko is surprised that his arm is perfectly fine now. The monster rises up. He waves his hand in fury, but Teiko manages to crouch down, dodging the blow. The guy jumps up. Teiko finds himself level with the buzzsaw's face and intends to check something. Guy gives the monster a powerful punch with his hand. He hits the demon again with his other hand. On the next punch, the monster tilts its head back. Teiko kicks the monster with his foot. The guy gets a taste for it and strikes the enemy with multiple punches. Kypholom can't fight back. Teiko sees the blood. He jumps up to kick the monster again. Kypholom, with a bloody face, wheezes loudly. Teiko realizes that his condition is something like a second breath, so it's impossible to miss such a chance. Kypholom rolls his extinguished eyes. Suddenly, a purple flame lights up in his eyes. Teiko cries out in surprise as Kypholom grabs him and squeezes him in his huge hand. The monster swings around and hurls the guy into the distance. The guy's eyes and mouth fill with red light as he flies. He is angry that the monster keeps tossing him. Teiko flies high above the city. The guy is surprised. He sees the monster coming towards him at a great speed. Teiko kicks the demon in flight, flying close to the guy. The monster gains morale. Teiko and the K-folk get into a fight. An explosion of energy is seen above the city. The opponents move quickly over the city, crashing into various buildings. The monster kicks Teiko with his foot, promptly falling downward. Once on the ground, the buzzsaw kicks the guy and he flies off to the side. Teiko lands on his feet, holding his hand against the pavement. Guy says he knew it wasn't going to be easy, but suggests his opponent get it over with soon. Guy is puzzled. Kypholom approaches Teiko, who is in a cloud of dust. The monster's arm is intact. Teiko is surprised by this and realizes that the demon can heal too. Kypholom gets into a fighting stance. Teiko assumes a fighting stance as well and says it's even better because now they both have a second wind and it's only fair. Inside the protagonist's brain, the red guy is watching Teiko's battle against the Hellcrawler on the screen. Teiko's alter ego is rooting for the hero and wants him to pummel the enemy. Someone falls to the ground. Teiko is in flight. The guy attacks the buzzsaw, at which point a red flame moves away from him. The monster grabs the guy's leg. All around, rocks and dust rise into the air. He clutches the writhing Teiko in his hand. The monster's eyes burn as he seals the guy into the asphalt with tremendous force. A purple spark shoots from the demon's eyes. Kypholom drags Teiko across the ground. The guy tries to break free of his enemy's grip. He manages to push himself up and kick the monster with his legs while standing on his hands. The buzzsaw's body ignites. The monster launches a stream of fire at Teiko. The guy tries to run away. Kypholom rises into the air and tries to reach his opponent with the fire stream. Teiko quickly runs away. A wall of fire moves behind the fleeing guy. The hero is puzzled. The guy sees a huge buzzsaw in front of him that looks like a cat with spikes on its back. Without stopping, Teiko asks him to get out of the way. Seeing the demon's single toe, the guy realizes that it's a level 1, but is puzzled that the monster is so huge. Turning around, Teiko sees a flying hellcrawler spewing flames. Teiko's costume is tattered and stained with ash. Placing his hand on the big buzzsaw and not turning to look at him, the guy says he hopes for forgiveness. Teiko's hand digs into the buzzsaw's body. The guy squeezes his hand with effort and jumps up. He leaps away from the monster. The big buzzkill's eyes light up with blue fire and his body shakes. He rises into the air as the hellcrawler flies past. Teiko's enemy begins to fall after colliding with another K-folk. He lands and looks up. Seeing his opponent's shadow, Teiko lands a leg kick. With a sharp kick, the guy tosses the K-folk aside. A couple more strikes follow. Hellcrawl lands on his back with Teiko on his feet beside him. Kypholom crosses his arms, defending himself. Teiko swings with a fist. An image of a character from the movie, who punched his enemy in the same way, appears before his eyes. Teiko remembers sitting in front of the screen and watching a movie where the main character was destroying the enemy. Marissa came over to the couch where Teiko was sitting, and leaning on the backrest. She grudgingly asked why the guy was still watching Kung Fu Fish like a little kid. Teiko asked his friend not to ramble and replied that the movie was for all ages, especially since the disc only cost $2. On the screen, Kung Fu Fish, crouching down and leaning on his arm, told Wolfcatcher, who had his arms folded across his chest, that he couldn't beat him because his opponent was too strong. The interlocutor replied that Reba was ready for the second rule. The Wolfcutter waves his hand. Then he waves his other hand and says that the strength of the blow directly depends on its speed. A surprised fish begins to realize what will happen if you constantly attack at high speed. Teiko stares intently at the screen, and Marissa cringes, thinking the movie is silly. On the screen, Volkscheitel shows various arm swings. He explains that if you constantly use these attacks, the blows will become more powerful than a machine gun. As she prepares to leave, Marissa says that this is some nonsense and calls Teiko to study for her exams. Without looking away from the screen, the guy replies that he'll prepare later. Marissa grudgingly says Teiko can do as she wants, but don't let him blame her when he fails the exam. The guy frowns, holding the remote in his hand. He decides to rewatch the episode again. The hero is angry at Marissa and thinks that studying won't make him cool, and that his girlfriend thinks a lot of herself. Looking at the movie disc, he thinks about the advice to constantly attack at high speed. Standing in front of the TV, Teiko clenches his hands into fists and says it sounds easy. The guy clenches his hand into a fist. Teiko swings in for a punch. The hero in the present tense delivers a powerful kick to the buzzsaw. He remembers his training from the past again and thinks he needs more speed. Teiko attacks the Kypholom again. He remembers how he once learned to repeat Wolfchitel's moves and believes he will become more powerful than a machine gun. Teiko from the past screams. The hero from the present follows his example. The boy strikes the buzzard with multiple blows. He remembers how he got tired of training in the past and decided that a normal person couldn't do that. As he makes another blow, Teiko thinks about the fact that he had doubts at the time, but now he is confident in his abilities. The guy throws the buzzsaw back, punching through the wall. The wall of the building collapses. The Kypholom sits with his head down, blood dripping from his mouth. Teiko walks through the collapsed wall with a hellish grin, and behind his back he presents the image of the wolfcutter. The boy is surprised. Looking at his hand, he realizes that he is his normal self again. Guy notices the buzzsaw's eye light up with purple fire. With a sudden movement, the monster throws the guy aside. Teiko lands on his feet. He thinks this is some kind of mockery and doesn't understand why the Kypholom is still alive. The monster staggers away. The hero realizes that its legs are barely holding up the enemy, and wonders if all level 3 Kypholom are like this. Teiko's knees are buckling. Staggering, the guy curses, and realizes he's at his limit. The hero is wobbling. Teiko struggles to stay on his feet. Lowering his head, he berates himself for not even a week yet, and he's already about to give up. The boy looks up. There is vapor on his face. Teiko yells loudly, assuming a fighting stance. He forbids himself from giving up until his first paycheck. The monster growls loudly, opening its maw wide. The demon swings his fist. The buzzsaw's eyes double over. Teiko watches puzzled as his enemy is blown to pieces, turning into a pink mass. The boy shockingly freezes in place and his eyes round. Teiko looks at his hand, smiling happily, but he hears someone's voice urging him not to be deceived. The hero sees the shadow of a man walking towards him on the road. Alder snaps his fingers and smiles broadly. He says that Teiko would have died alone, but kudos to the guy for his resilience.